One day she had a very strange dream in which she should have turned 18 years old. Her birthday was approaching, but for some reason, that dream turned into a real horror. She heard her mother calling her, so she went to her room, but it was not at all what the girl expected to see. It wasn't her mother, and that's why the heroine wanted to tell her everything as soon as possible. When suddenly she appeared behind her and began to say softly and gently that she had no reason to worry. The woman turned to her daughter, named Loana, and with a strange smile asked if the child would tell anyone about it. The heroine immediately understood that something was wrong here. The person behind her did not behave like her mother at all, and that strange, excited voice. Suddenly, the woman took out a dagger, said that this is how she will finally become a favorite, and now is the time when the heroine should help her. Also, the mother explained that she was always strict with her servants, and if someone wanted to be rude to her, he should have kept his own life. The heroine understood that she needed to run away, but her body stopped obeying commands, and tears began to appear in her eyes. Then the mistress sharply hugged her daughter, reminded her that she had asked to behave quietly. On her 18th birthday, she received only death as a gift from her mother. In one moment, the heroine appeared in an incomprehensible place, but the words kept repeating in her head that she did not want this, and just wanted to be loved. In a few seconds, the girl woke up screaming in her own bed, something that scared the maid. The servant, calling the heroine a princess, said that she was very frightened, and in general, she woke up the lady all morning, but she did not wake up, so she may have forgotten that it was Prince Louis's birthday. Loana was very disoriented, because she definitely remembered that her mother had killed her. Everything around looked like her room, and at the same moment, everything was somehow unfamiliar. Her hands were also surprisingly small, and then she remembered that she was only 8 years old, and the dream was surprisingly realistic, which made her believe in herself. Loana Belcom, she is a princess of an empire where her father was an emperor and her mother a concubine. Although she was brought up as a princess, she and her brother were of the same blood, but they treated them completely differently. If I recall, my mother loved Louis more, even in a dream. When the mother did not pay attention to the child, then the servants became not only rude, but also stopped observing the order in the palace accordingly. Suddenly, Loana felt a very strange feeling, as if the door was about to open, and there her mother would shout at her. And literally in a few seconds, an angry woman's voice was heard from the corridor, which was directed towards the heroine. And then the door opened, from where Lillian Darsh appeared, who was the biological mother of the heroine, and she wanted to know why her daughter touched Louis's cake. She was accused of spoiling the cake, on which confectioners worked around the clock, because of which she will not receive anything at all until she confesses everything. No matter how strange, the girl clearly remembered this incident. This situation was in her dream. Then the maids of honor accidentally spoiled the cake and put all the blame on the child. Such an identical situation looked very strange, as if it was not a dream, but a full-fledged reality. The heroine refused to believe that those terrible things could be real. Because of this, she suddenly began to feel sick. Not getting any response from her daughter, the woman slapped her, saying that until the child behaves accordingly, she will sit here. And also, she ordered to close the door so that no one would dare to leave here, after which a feeling of déjà vu came over her once in a while. After that day, she was closed for several days, and during this time, Loana remembered all the events of her dream, although she had already forgotten a lot. Some time passed, and all the heroine wanted was to eat and drink. Perhaps she did not remember all the events, but those moments appeared before her eyes again and again, because of which she pondered the reason why her mother did not love her. In one moment, the girl saw herself in the mirror, where the cause of hatred was hidden, her blonde hair and eyes. She did not look like her mother at all. But the child also did not look like the father, so it is not known how they could have such a daughter. But in the end, now was not the time to think about such things, because if this dream is true, then it will be possible to avoid death. She passed. She did not know the future, but now everything will be different, and this will allow her to save herself. The father fulfilled all the mother's requests, which meant that he would not help the child escape, although in fact he never even tried to meet her. And therefore, if she wanted to survive, then first of all it is necessary to find him first. The genealogy of the imperial family was very confusing, and the current emperor was not the legitimate heir to the crown. And all this because of the stupid rules that a woman cannot ascend the throne, and therefore the legal heir never became the empress. The princess had to marry a distant relative of the imperial family, where she was supposed to give birth to a prince who would inherit the throne. And therefore everyone knew that the empress was the real ruler. Neither her father, who comes from a family close to the imperial family, nor her brother Louis had the same blonde hair, and this proved that she was the heiress of the imperial family. Therefore, there was hope that the empress would protect her. The appearance, which her mother hated so much, would eventually become her protection. After trying to open the door, as expected, it was closed, so she started calling someone. After all, before she always behaved quietly. so this behavior may seem strange to others. The girl continued to knock on the door, and in an instant, everything around lit up, and in a second, the door opened by itself. She didn't understand the reason why it happened like that, so she assumed that it was done on purpose, to set her up. In the end, she got a bit restless. While she was regaining consciousness, the maids could be heard talking cheerfully, so she had to hide immediately. The women calmly walked past the curtains where the child was hiding, and she came out with relief, realizing that there is a lot of dust around, and no one cleans here at all. After all, they could very easily spot her by the color of her hair, so she had to cover her head somehow. The girl managed to get out unnoticed in the grass maze near the palace. This was the place where the Empress was supposed to be, but it was not clear where to go no matter what. But this was the first time she went outside the palace, and without her mother. First, it was necessary to get out of this labyrinth, walked a little forward. She had a strange feeling, as if someone was constantly watching her every step. But nevertheless, having convinced herself that it was only her imagination, the girl went further. And later she smelled roses. But at the same moment, a strange figure appeared behind him saying that he must be here somewhere. Then a terrible realization came, why the aroma seemed so familiar to her. The same came from her mother, and it seemed that the woman had come here for her. At that moment, she became incredibly scared as suddenly someone took her and asked her to be silent. Nearby, Louis was walking with his mother, and although she asked him to turn back because it was not a place for games, the boy still wanted to have mercy on the roses. In the end, the woman tenderly offered to watch it next time, because he is the main character of today's holiday. The heroine could see him and understand that he was her mother's favorite because she had never smiled at her daughter like that. Tears appeared in the eyes, which in a moment began to fall down. Then the stranger was somewhat embarrassed and began to apologize because such a suddenness must have frightened her. As it turned out, those two were looking for him, and for this reason he hid. But the girl did not respond to this in any way, and looking closely, the boy saw how she was trembling, so he began to calm her as soon as he could. Loana continued to watch him in disbelief, not understanding who it was, and being glad that she still hid her face. She could not understand why, but for some reason, he reminded her of someone from a dream. Nevertheless, collecting her thoughts, the girl wondered what he was doing here and whether he was a relative of her mother, because of which she carefully crawled away from him, wondering what kind of relationship he had with them. In the end, the boy declared that it was some kind of misunderstanding, and in a moment, he explained with difficulty that he came to the banquet with his parents, and they forced him to be friends with the second prince. And this annoyed him very much. He also admitted that he really wanted to give a present for his birthday, but he couldn't find a princess. This greatly interested the girl, because of which the guest asked if she had never been to the holidays, but she could not answer anything. Such a reaction surprised the boy, as well as how the child was dressed, so he made sure that she didn't like the holiday either. And so, with a cute smile, he asked if she was too bored here too. In the end, the boy was glad that he was not the only one who felt that way. However, he asked her to keep this secret from others. Also, Loana uncertainly asked why he was looking for the princess, and then the new friend became somewhat gloomy. He explained that the Empress deliberately invited all the nobles, but the main character never came to the celebration, and no one knew the reason for this. In the end, there were rumors that she was not Lillian's daughter. When she should be 8 years old, the girl should officially come out into the world, and that day came, but she was nowhere to be seen. The boy did not understand this because it was only her holiday, and he really wanted to congratulate her. Thinking about it, the girl realized that today is Louis's birthday, and they were twins, and if they have a birthday together, and therefore if he was congratulated, then she should be congratulated. As it turned out, someone did come to congratulate her, and that's why she noticed that today and her birthday are similar. At the same moment, Loana realized that she blurted out without thinking, and this could mean that she was exposed. However, the boy assured that she seems unlucky to have the same birthday as the princess. He intended to give it to the princess, but a gift should only be given if a person accepts it, and therefore he can give this to someone else. Grabbing her hand, the boy put on the jewelry and noticed that his parents had asked him to give the gift to the princess personally, but he had personally prepared it, so he had no reason to worry, especially since it's her birthday too. So it would be rude if he left without leaving a present. If they already have a birthday on the same day, then it can be assumed that it was prepared just for her from the very beginning. Loana, at that moment, wondered if he had guessed that his gift had gone to the real owner. In the end, they said goodbye, and in the end, the boy asked to return home quickly, otherwise you might catch a cold. At the last moment, the heroine noticed a sign on his cufflinks that resembled the coat of arms of an unknown house. Then she made sure that when she finds the Empress, she will definitely find out who he is, and when they meet, then the girl will ask what his name is. Meanwhile, in the palace, the knight turned to his master, asking if he really wouldn't go, because no matter how much he hated Lillian, the prince and princess were his brother and sister, and therefore he had to go, no matter what the nobles thought, as if he didn't care about them. It was Rudion Belcom, crown prince and son of the Empress, and he was convinced that he was the only heir. There was a reason why he hated his half-brother and sister so much, and it was all because of his childhood. The appearance of Lillian affected the behavior of the emperor. After she seduced him, the husband began to neglect his own duties. He left them to spend time with the concubine, and in the end, he stopped leaving the palace altogether. The woman took away their father and husband, and after that, it was impossible to treat her children normally. Hearing this, the knight pointed out that people say that the princess has blonde hair and blue eyes, which may be a sign of the imperial family. However, Rudion did not believe this, because the emperor has simple brown hair and dark eyes. They were far from blue. The daughter of a concubine could not be born with such features. Even with such gossip, she was no match for his bloodline. And even if it were true, nothing would change in the end, because these stupid rules were still in effect. A woman could not take the throne. Many people suffered because of a law that some old emperor had introduced. The Empress was engaged in all state affairs and had legal power, but at the same time had no right to wear the crown. In the end, Rudion scolded himself for not being able to do anything about it. He turned further to the walk, thinking about what he would do with it when he became emperor. Suddenly, an unknown little person came out from behind the bushes. It was the heroine, and seeing the crown prince in front of her, she was very frightened. According to the maids, the crown prince was very cold, and it was said that he hated everyone who had anything to do with her mother. The girl heard that he even publicly humiliated Louis, and for some reason they met today. The knight was surprised to see a copy of the prince, but he intended to deal with it himself. The elder came closer and coldly asked what was happening here. She had blonde hair and blue eyes, and the Lillian Palace was right next door. It could only mean that those rumors were indeed true, and Luana Belcom was in front of him now. Sharply approaching, the prince claimed that she seemed to be laughing at him, and therefore it was necessary to find out why she had come here in the first place. Only now did the girl realize that she was not wearing a cape, and she was exposed. The knight was also noticeably surprised that there was a princess in front of him, and she had dirty clothes and disheveled hair. This is not how a princess whose birthday is today should look. When she was asked again the reason for which she came here, the heroine could not stand it, and admitted that she wanted to meet the Empress. Rudion, from this, became even more gloomy. He wondered why this was, but whatever the reason, he had no intention of helping. At the same moment, the knight came to her defense, and having embraced the child, he asked the prince why he was doing this. Rudion sincerely did not understand why his assistant got in, because now in front of them was her daughter, and the two of them suffered from her. However, he instead wondered why the guy was so rude, because you could understand everything only by looking at her more closely. Meanwhile, the heroine began to lose consciousness due to lack of strength. She realized that this was her opportunity, which could also be her last. It was necessary to say clearly. With obvious difficulty and tears in her eyes, the girl stated that she no longer wanted to go there, and after these words, she lost consciousness. The prince immediately began to make excuses that he did not think that everything would go so far, but the assistant already intended to take her to the doctor. In response, Rudion noticed that it is possible to take her back, because the neighboring palace is not so far away, and he did not want to have anything in common with that person at all. But the knight did not give up and continued to ask not to behave so rudely with this girl. After all, she was his sister, and you have to face the truth. She is only 8 years old. But now the girl is too small and light for her age. Then the boy saw what the assistant was pointing out. Her hands were very thin. It seemed as if they could be broken by an ordinary wind. Besides, there were wounds that were not visible at first glance. They had one mother, but while one had a beautiful birthday, the others beat and abused them. In the end, it was decided to take her to a safe place, and there let the doctor examine her condition. The second prince's hair was the same as Lillian's, because of which Rudion did not feel that they were brothers. But the princess looked completely different. Maybe it's just because of the color of her hair. But for some reason, completely different feelings were felt towards her. The girl was put to bed, and the woman, looking at her, asked who she was, to which the prince repeatedly reminded her that she was Lillian's daughter, although they did not look alike at all. And although the boy pointed out that they had suffered too much because of that woman, the woman present noticed with a smile that the girl was not guilty of anything. The prince reluctantly agreed, but nevertheless, he felt guilty just for bringing her daughter here, and he did not understand the peace of others. In a few seconds, a doctor came running, who, gasping for breath, asked where the patient was. Later, after taking a good look at her, the man confirmed that she has too many scars, and he has medicine that can help. Nevertheless, there were no serious problems, but all this was simple malnutrition, and it already shocked everyone present. The prince was especially surprised, because all this was in the imperial palace, and it was simply not possible that she would finish her meal there. The doctor also asked who this girl was, but not hearing an answer, he suddenly compared their hair color, and then everything became clear. In the end, he didn't show any signs, and assured her that she had no reason to worry. She just needed to be fed well. She was still a child. And therefore, with good care, she would quickly recover. Also, the doctor indicated that if she went to see the crown prince, it could take only a few days to recover. And this statement again shocked everyone present. And the doctor began to explain that he is not so careless, and no matter how you look at it, she looks like a prince, and it was impossible to hide it. Everyone present was very confused, but the doctor, clearly sweating, asked if the Empress already knew about this, to which Rudeon noticed that he still did not know how best to tell it. Indeed, lately, the mother has been thinking a lot about her daughter whom she lost many years ago, and therefore, if you show the princess now, the woman may remember her dead daughter. Nevertheless, the knight asked what the doctor thought about her height. In response, he was assured that she was really small for 5 years, but there was no need to worry. But when he was told that she was really already 8, the doctor was very shocked, because she looked at most 5, not 8. It did not enter his mind that she was so old, because it meant that the prince became a father even earlier than he imagined. In the end, it was explained to him that this is Princess Loana, who is not the daughter of the crown prince. And then he finally realized that before him was the daughter of the concubine Lillian. Rudeon, with restrained anger and a fake smile, asked what he had been thinking about until now. In the end, it was not possible. He could not have an adult child, to which the doctor began to justify himself by saying that she really looks like him. And in general, she does not look more than 5 years old. Then the prince was already worried and wondered again whether the reason for this was really malnutrition. And it was true. Not even the doctor could understand that something was wrong. The girl was too small for her age. The boy did not understand this and nevertheless asked how much money Lillian's mother gave for maintenance. But everyone understood that that woman did not ask for money for her son, but only for her daughter, Loana, and it seemed that all this was nothing more than dirty games. This fact made the boy incredibly angry. For him, it was not clear how it was possible to do such a thing with his daughter, because they were blood relatives, and the woman used the money for her needs, although those expenses were even too large to support the child. Neither the famous soldiers, nor the professors of the academy, nor the best teachers in the barracks received so much. At that moment, the knight decided to take advantage of the situation and mockingly asked what they should do, whether they should contact her and tell her that she would take her daughter. Then the prince turned to the knight, whose name was Adam, and ordered him to ask Vincent to find out everything he could. It was important to find out everything that happened in that cursed palace. But nevertheless, there was still the question of whether to tell the Empress about it. Rudeon was especially worried about it. Because of the death of his sister, even after several years, his mother was still suffering. And although Adam suggested that it might benefit the Empress, the prince only asked to stop talking about her at all. Now he thought that she was using a mother who missed her daughter, fuming with naive dreams. Nevertheless, everyone except him was positive about the girl's stay here. Meanwhile, the heroine saw darkness around her and felt that it was very soft there. But as soon as she realized it, she woke up with a scream. She could not recognize the place where she was now. Everything around her was just shining, and the whole room looked beautiful. This meant that she was still not taken to her mother, because she would not have given her such a room under any circumstances. He carefully put his feet out of bed. She suddenly came across slippers, which were surprisingly soft, because of which she was a little scared at first. She did not understand whose room it was. It was very beautiful here, but she saw the crown prince when she lost consciousness. But nevertheless, she wanted to believe that it was not true, because this would not be the best schedule for her. Walking barefoot to the exit, she stood in front of a corridor as tidy as her room. She was shocked by all this. What could be seen here, even in the sweeps, was not suitable for her mother's palace. She also saw in the window that she was wearing other clothes, which meant that someone had changed her clothes. Suddenly, someone behind asked if she had woken up yet, and out of surprise, she slipped on her own clothes, but they managed to save her from falling. Then the maid appeared, who politely greeted her, said that from this day on she would take care of her, and she was Maria Devon, who began the work of her personal maid. These words were a novelty for the princess, and then she suspected the worst option, that while she was running away from her mother and the crown prince, she was simply kidnapped. But it was also necessary to find out who caught her now, and raising her head, she saw the one she wanted to see the least. The vicious images of their last meeting flashed before her eyes, causing her legs to no longer support her body. It suddenly subsided. The girl began to beg to save her. At first, the prince did not understand what was being said, but it lasted only a few seconds, and then he already apologized, because he did not want to scare her at all. This was not the person the heroine knew. The prince, who was known for his coolness, suddenly apologized. Suddenly, he took her in his arms, and when asked where they were going, He simply asked if she wanted to eat. On the way, the boy also asked what she would like to eat, and this question puzzled the girl. She remembered something from a dream, and so she noticed that it was sweet, and the elder assumed that she seemed to want dessert, and this word noticeably interested her. She tried to remember if it was exactly what she ate in a dream. She tried to remember, but she couldn't. She couldn't remember anything except her crazy mother and her own death. Nevertheless, Rudayan assured her that he would give her everything she wanted, but only when she got better, and until then, it would be worth eating something else. To determine her taste, he asked if she had a favorite soup. After thinking for a while, Luana finally decided that the simplest one would suit her. She already knew that desserts would be served later, and maybe when she tried it, she would finally be able to remember that special person and the face of the person who gave it to her. So they reached the large hall, which was the dining room, and Maria was already waiting there, who was asked to bring any soup. The heroine was carefully placed on a chair in front of the table, and as it turned out, something was wrong there. As it turned out, it was prepared according to her age, but it seems that we will still have to look for it next time. The last statement somewhat interested her, because it could mean that she was still being fed. However, she apologized again, and this time, Rudayan took her on his lap and began to feed her. Looking at this reaction, the boy noticed that she probably wanted something sweet, but she would have to suffer a little. Luana wanted to be indignant, but in a moment, she felt the taste of food. It was not what she was used to, because it was not cold and tasteless. Now she could taste all the vegetables and the broth. It was the first time she ate such a hot and delicious soup. And the prince, continuing to feed her, understood that usually children did not like this, but she seemed to eat well. Very soon the bowl was empty, and the girl carefully asked if she could have more. This visibly surprised the boy, and this reaction somewhat frightened the heroine, and therefore she assured that if it was not possible, then everything was fine. In fact, Rudayan couldn't figure out why she liked the soup so much. The girl was different from Selena and Asel, even though they were about the same age. But Luana herself interrupted her thoughts, saying that it was the first time she ate something like this, and that's why she did it so quickly, for which she apologized. Everyone knew that vegetable soup is a food that is available to everyone, even the poorest commoners. But if the princess has never eaten it, at this moment, Maria, together with Mr. were serious, decided that warm cocoa would be the best drink for the patient. Then Rudayan offered his promise that he would give cocoa tomorrow. At that moment, the heroine realized that she was tickled, and the prince turned out to be really kind. The boy did not understand the reason for her joy because all this was a normal phenomenon, and the older brother should always take care of the younger ones. When he was done, Rudayan picked her up again in his arms to continue carrying her, despite the fact that she assured that she could walk on her own. However, Luana did not forget about her mission until she was returned to her mother. She needed to find the Empress. Now was an opportunity. So she simply offered to tell where to go. After all, she could find her way around her own palace. But the boy did go to the Luana Palace, and it was a disgusting place that looked more like a prison than a place to live. This confused him somewhat, and therefore he asked not to call that garbage dump a palace. Instead, it would be better to look at your new room. The girl was visibly shocked by this news, and as soon as she wanted to deny it, the boy interrupted her. He abruptly declared that he was her brother, Rudayan, and simply could not leave his sister. And although her blood was mixed, Luana was still a member of the imperial family, and if she didn't mind, she could stay in this room as long as she wanted. The way he was different from the way people thought about him troubled her, but in the end, she was sure she would get used to it. Having gone outside, the prince met Adam, who was supposed to be at home now, but he assured that he was afraid that the master would run into problems. After all, he had no other knight. Despite the fact that his sick sister was waiting for him at home, Adam stayed here, maybe because of Luana. And now, with a smile on his face, he assured that he knows, as if with his close friend everything will definitely work out. But in a moment he noticed that Mr. is not one of those who take out his anger on a child. Adam also took out a bottle of wine and said it was a gift, and it was very difficult for him to get it. The elven wine that the knight brought was kept only in the main palace. It was one of the gifts for the accident. Due to the intrigues of Lillian, Adam lost his father, and Rudayan in turn his teacher. These were just disgusting memories. After all, she was the enemy's daughter, but at the same time his younger sister. At that moment, the knight handed the gentleman a glass of wine and asked him not to think about nonsense. On that day, the prince pledged to take revenge on her. Meanwhile, the heroine was lying in her bed, realizing that if she didn't wake up now, she would be scolded again. Opening her eyes, she rose sharply. Maria was already there, who seemed to be glad to see her young lady, and she only now remembered that she was in the palace of the crown prince. The maid immediately handed the heroine cocoa, reminding her that the crown prince had promised her this yesterday. As it turned out, the gentleman still approached her in the morning and asked to pass it on to Luana, and in general, he was like that for the first time, and this fact visibly shocked the weak child. The girl knew that he hated everything that had to do with her mother, and nevertheless treated her very well, despite the fact that she was the daughter of an enemy. After all, the mother's name constantly haunted her daughter, because of which she did not know whether she had the right to accept this kindness. The maid, seeing that the heroine had finished, just as joyfully poured her another drink. A little silent, Luana sincerely thanked for this kindness, assured that one day he would surely repay them. The child thought for a while about how to address the maid, but she saw it, and in the end suggested calling her simply by her name, because of which the heroine suggested the same. Then, she said that since yesterday, she had been wondering if this room had really been prepared for her, and Maria confirmed it, adding that she had personally prepared it. This fact somewhat confused her, but nevertheless she had to accept reality. Suddenly, the woman began to explain that she actually grew up with the crown prince. He was just like her dad, and there was nothing special about him, unlike Loana, and that's why she was now jealous that the lord had such a cute sister. When suddenly the one they mentioned appeared behind him, and he noticed that this is what his personal maid thought of him. The heroine had already begun to prepare for the worst, when suddenly Maria removed her hand from her shoulder and reminded her that she had already asked not to frighten her like that. Adam, who suddenly had a position, fully supported the maid's opinion. When asked what he forgot here, the knight noticed that he had some business, and in general, the princess celebrated her birthday yesterday, so he prepared something, hoping that she would like it. And it was a cute bunny for a cute princess, the second gift for her birthday. It was a little bigger than expected, but she seemed to like it, or so Adam believed. The bracelet that the heroine received yesterday was given to her without knowing who she was, and even if someone else had been there, the boy would have given it to her. However, this gift was especially for her, and the girl was very happy about it. While everyone was admiring the baby, Rudion noticed the same bracelet that looked like it was handmade, and it was hard to believe that Lillian had given it, so Adam was ordered to find out about the jewelry. At this moment, the heroine was glad that she was surrounded by many good people, but at the same time, she wished that her mother was just as kind. Maria saw such a sudden change in mood, and although the girl assured that everything was fine, the tears in her eyes betrayed her mood. In the end, the tears only grew stronger. And in her head, she wondered if she could ever be happy, and because of their causeless kindness, the tears fell on their own. Afterwards, Loana fell asleep safely, and the prince praised the knight for his skill, to which Adam reminded that he has a younger sister and simply knows how to calm a crying child. Adam's younger sister is Asl Mild. Unlike her elder, she was sick, and therefore had to stay at home all day. However, her brother took good care of her, so that she did not withdraw into herself and was at least a little happy. In the end, Maria angrily declared that it was impossible to give candy before bedtime. In general, she could not believe that at least someone here knew how to take care of children, and therefore, in her opinion, it would be better to tell everything to the Empress. Suddenly, Rudion sharply denied it, and the knight agreed that now was not the time. She was also reminded that she needed to remember what day it was recently, and she remembered, for which she began to apologize sharply. Once the mother fell unconscious, she became unrecognizable after losing her daughter, whom she had been waiting for several months. From that incident, she could no longer have children, and since then, she treated all girls in a special way. She even treated her niece Selena as her own daughter. And therefore, if a woman finds out about the abuse of the heroine, who even before all this is very similar to her, she will be simply horrified. In the end, Rudion held fast to the position of heir, but gossip quickly spread around the capital. The fact that Lillian was mocking her caused sympathy. But most of the nobles will mockingly declare that she is simply a half-blood. Loana's honor will be broken, and she will have to return to her real mother. If this does happen, the girl will be subjected to even more abuse. And therefore, now the prince claimed that she would be back to normal in a few days. It was necessary to wait a little longer, and he would discuss it with his mother as soon as the time came. A cold and eerie atmosphere hung around, and in order to relieve it a little, Adam cheerfully announced that it was time for work because the papers will not fill themselves. In the end, Maria was able to take care of the princess, and she confirmed it, saying that now she is full of strength as never before. Later, the girl was again served soup, which she hesitated to taste for some time. She knew that the first time she tried it, it was delicious. But nevertheless, I wanted chocolate, which Maria took from the knight. But the maid's cocoa was also very tasty, but compared to the past, it is simply the food of the gods. The heroine began to quickly eat the dish, when suddenly Maria got confused and, leaving the room, explained that she would be back soon, and if she was needed, she could just ring the bell. Loana knew that even if she wanted to call her, every time she went somewhere, she would be followed by looks. On the one hand, there was the usual curiosity, and on the other, misogyny because of her mother. Suddenly, there was a knock on the room, and they asked permission to enter, and it was Adam, who immediately began to look around for Maria. When he realized that they were alone, he said that he came here to convey something, and it was what the girl needed now. The knight explained that his master was very busy at work and could not be distracted, but he said that he would visit her very soon. He asked if something was bothering her, but the heroine denied it, and at the same moment thanked her with a smile. In fact, she saw her mother only once a week and sometimes once a month. Suddenly, the menacing voice of Maria was heard from behind, which was directed in the direction of the knight. The maid's surprisingly angry look immediately changed to a friendly one, and she said that she should have come earlier. And she brought various sweets with her on a tray, and this meant that the girl would now be able to eat sweets. The woman assured that it was her gift for the princess. After all, she didn't have a welcome banquet, so it was worth at least now to thank her for coming to this palace. This touching moment did not last long because out of nowhere Rudion appeared, who claimed that she eats too much. From such suddenness, the girl began to cough, and Maria looked angrily into the prince's eyes. Loana herself, with indignation, confirmed that she was scared, and therefore asked to knock on the door next time. In response, the master of the palace declared that she had clearly become braver than at their first meeting. Approaching, he mockingly reminded that this is his palace, and therefore he is ready to think carefully if he is asked nicely. This only infuriated Loana, and therefore she stated threateningly that she thought the prince was a good person, but it seems she was wrong. Then Adam, with a slight smile, asked if he still planned to tease her. After that, he handed her another small gift, assuring her that it was from his sister. In the end, she really liked it, and the prince noticed that it was really strange that Asel agreed to help him. The boy realized that before him was the only princess in the empire, and therefore he was glad that everything was fine with her. Then he reluctantly asserted that she really fell in love with this doll, to which the girl called him naughty, and at the same moment covered her mouth. The heroine was very frightened as she uttered it completely by accident. Because of this, she could be returned to her mother, and therefore, until it was too late, she began to apologize. The prince, in turn, apologized himself, confirming that indeed he was teasing her too much, but still, it's not worth eating too many sweets before her body recovers. Thinking about it now, Loana realized that he had never been angry with her, apart from their first meeting. But even then, he didn't get angry, which was strange, because this person should hate her, so it was necessary to check. In order to check whether the master of the house would get angry, she pointed to a chocolate cake in the distance. He assured her that she wanted it, but he was far away. This, of course, annoyed him a little, but he did it anyway, casually asking why the girl didn't listen to him at all. At that moment, Adam asked the girl to close her eyes and open her mouth so that he could show her something. Without thinking for a long time, she agreed, and the prince, seeing this, immediately understood what they wanted from him. And nevertheless, he began to feed the named sister. To the joy of those present, everyone already at that moment realized that the prince had really changed. After some time, her son went to the Empress's palace with his knight, and when asked where such suddenness came from, he declared that he must tell his mother the whole truth. Since some time had already passed, in his opinion, the right moment had come. When suddenly a noble woman, who was the Countess of Chartres, blocked his way, she asked why he had visited the Empress's palace. The boy was not happy about such a meeting, but nevertheless it was necessary to keep calm and manners. So he explained that he had come to see his mother, but he also wanted to know what she was doing here at such and such a time. The noble woman noticed that the Empress cared a lot about her daughter, and these words made the prince mad, because of which he came closer and explained that she did not understand anything. And the fact that her mother takes care of her did not allow the Countess to ask him questions. You should not think that she has any rights here. And this is the last warning. As soon as the boy moved to a distance, she began to shake with anger, because the Empress is very good to her daughter, and therefore you should treat her like a sister. Despite her anger, the Countess believed that even if the Crown Prince didn't like it, there was nothing he could do. After all, when the Empress becomes her guardian, the daughter's future will already be determined. In the end, the prince reached his mother's room, who seemed glad to see him in her. He explained that he wanted to tell her something, but first he just needed to go for a walk somewhere. Now he pointed to the child, and at the same moment she grabbed his cloak and called him brother, adding that she also wanted to listen, because she was his sister. The guy explained in turn that it was some kind of mistake, because he has only one sister, but the girl did not give up, and dared to point out that she no longer has her, and now she is his younger sister. Rudion could not stand it, and pulling off his cloak, declared that he should stop deceiving himself. After that, he addressed her officially, asserted that she should understand the fact that his mother took pity on her did not make her his sister. After all, she was a simple daughter of the Count, and nothing in the Emperor's family would become hers. The presence of an outsider here is already a gift. In desperation, Selena began to seek support from the Empress, but she was also adamant. So she said that although she liked her, she had gone too far this time. And therefore, the order was given to the maid to take the child to her mother. Selena began to ask her aunt to stop doing this, but she said that if she said anything about her daughter again, there would be no forgiveness. In the end, they were left alone, and the woman offered to finally tell what had happened. This was the person he always remembered, the person who would never break and who always stood his ground. Even after the death of the previous emperor, after the new one took a concubine, in the end, there was no need to worry about this. And that's why it's time to tell that a few days ago, near the palace, he met a girl. She was wearing tattered clothes and her whole body was covered with scars. And she also showed signs of malnutrition, so they are taking care of her now. And this girl was Lillian's daughter, Loana Belcom. When asked if there was any news from their palace, the boy explained that the girl has been missing for several days, but no one even guesses about it. He was in that place, and it was like a prison. The woman took it hard and realized what she should have said right away. A maid named Emma was also asked about it, but she also heard about it for the first time. But suddenly she looked at the night and noticed that today she will have a long conversation with the children. At first, the Empress intended to see that child, even if not the child she had so laboriously born, was to be seen. Loana is a child born to a concubine and the Emperor, one of the twins. When the woman saw her for the first time, her heart simply stopped because she was very similar to her dead child. And when the girl opened her eyes and smiled at her, deep down, the Empress already fell in love with this child. However, from that day on, the woman did not see her again, although she really wanted to. But because of the fear of gossip, I deliberately kept it as a follow-up. But now there was an opportunity to see her again. She stopped in front of the door and began to hesitate, which is why they asked her if it was fear. First, she wanted to know how the girl was feeling, and Maria explained that there was no need to worry, because the girl calmed down after the snack. They also explained to her that Loana likes sweets, and the prince added that she likes everything that can be eaten. Every time he saw her eating, he wondered where she got so much. Sometimes it seemed that she was born to eat, especially since she is always looking for it. Everyone understood that the woman hesitated, but she also did not understand whether it was possible to meet like this, because the girl might not be happy for her. But the thoughts did not last long, and the son decided to help with this, sharply opening the door in front of her. In the end, they all carefully went inside, where they saw that the princess had fallen asleep. Rudion casually noticed that she looks like a piglet when she sleeps, but Maria assured her that all children are like that, and once he was the same. Well, the Empress continued to watch her silently for some time, and finally asked how old she was, and as it turned out, she turned 8 not so long ago. It was hard to believe, because the woman thought that her mother would take good care of her. After all, it was worth visiting her in person, without worrying about gossip. Everyone watched silently, but at one point Rudion suggested his mother wait in his office until she woke up because it wouldn't last long. The woman agreed, and after some time they summoned the butler, where, handing over the document, they asked if he knew what it was. The man realized with horror that this was a report about the state of Princess Loana and her palace. Of course he heard that the budget allocated to her was huge, but for some reason the state of the palace and the princess was in a very bad state. The Empress had a similar reaction at first, and now the butler was apologizing because he couldn't find the right words, but the woman also felt partly guilty. And therefore now she will personally deal with the budget of the princess. And for a start, it is worth reviewing the powers given to the concubine. The guy assumed that as soon as she found out the truth, she would immediately visit them. Probably say that there was nothing wrong with the fact that she spent money for her own daughter. In the end, that person was too cruel. The Empress knew her character very well, and therefore, if she does appear, it is worth sending her to her. The prince also observed that he hoped that it would remain a secret, and when asked if he did not want to show indulgence, he assured that it was a luxury for a concubine. At the same moment, he felt someone's steps. They were very light, but Adam was not heard, and this could mean only one thing. I immediately asked her how she got here, and the girl assured that when she woke up, she did not find Maria. Then Rudion, with a heavy sigh, noticed that only the person who gives food is seen in him. The boy also offered his mother, who was behind them, to have dinner, and she agreed. When it came to the mother, the heroine immediately understood that it was about the Empress. Turning around, these thoughts were confirmed. The same Empress was indeed beside her. Then came the realization that maybe this woman would not harm her, but this did not mean that she would like the girl. Loana began to think that they might not be satisfied with her already during this dinner. They might hate her and expel her from here, ordered her to return to her native mother. While she was thinking about it, they reached the table, and it became clear that they were indeed planning to have dinner. The prince asked when she stopped enjoying food, and whether the Empress was to blame for this, because in the end she herself wanted to meet with her. Then the woman assumed that the girl was simply uncomfortable. But in one moment, the heroine's attention was drawn to the meat on the table. Then the boy took the bowl and noticed that no matter how much she ate, she still remained weak for some reason. A similar reaction greatly interested the Empress and the servant Emma. After all, now Rudion cut the girl's meat, and no one could ever think that he could be so cute. The maid confirmed it, and now she wasn't even sure that she had raised him. The guest also pointed out that her son also puts the girl to bed, and it seemed that she was happy to hear that. After all, it was that Rudion who was always cold to Selene and expelled Louis without a drop of sympathy. Now, as if he were a completely different person, he took care and cared for the person whose mother he hates more than anything. At the same moment, the Empress looked at the girl, realizing that she did not look like Lillian at all, but if she was alive, she would probably be the same adult. In the end, she came to her senses, realizing that you can't compare the dead with the living, although she felt sorry for both of them. But this girl was really charming. Later, desserts were also brought to the table, where they were placed in front of everyone. But the prince put his dish to the neighbor at the table, assuring her that she could take it. Then the Empress moved her dessert to her and offered to eat it, to which the heroine at first refused. But without thinking for a long time, she still accepted. Looking at this reaction, Rudion noticed that she was beginning to trust anyone who gave her food. Suddenly, the woman asked her son if he was starving her, to which he firmly denied it. She noticed that she was somewhat impressed by the child's fascination with food, because when he eats, he stops paying attention to everything. What became completely unexpected was that Loana began to put a fork with food into the mouth of the elder and ask him to open it. She assured that she was the only one who ate dessert here, and therefore there was still a little left. Before the prince answered, his mother eerily asked him to be careful with his words, because the girl could misunderstand him, so you should never say anything bad in front of her. Such a request scared the boys, and they immediately began to make excuses that he never said too much, and Maria takes good care of her. Suddenly, the woman noticed that she could take her away, so she directly asked the girl if she wanted to live with her. Such suddenness somewhat confused the girl. She did not know the reason for this, and didn't understand why they wanted to take her away. The child realized that it would be good if she stayed with the Empress, because with her help, it would be possible to achieve what she wanted faster than with the crown prince. Nevertheless, she said that she wants to stay here. From the very beginning, she wanted to be with anyone except her mother, but she soon got used to them. But what is more important is that Maria, Adam, and the prince are here with her. The Empress treated this with understanding and was not going to insist on her point. Suddenly, a frightened Maria ran into the room, saying that there were maids roaming around. The woman looked at the heroine in disbelief, because of which she realized that her mother was probably involved in this. Then Rudion, realizing what was going on, noticed that Maria seemed to want to say something, but they would leave for now. But the child sharply stated that it seems to be related to her mother, and therefore she would also like to hear. However, the elder, taking her in his arms, claimed that this would be a conversation for adults, and therefore they do not need to listen to it. As soon as the prince and the girl left, Maria explained that the maids of the concubine's palace were already looking for the princess. It was most likely an order from Lillian herself. She just didn't tell anyone about it, but the two maids are now secretly looking for her. The Empress pointed out that those maids were simply disgustingly taking care of their mistress. Nothing worse could happen, but nevertheless, thanks to this, Lillian's visit could be delayed. But before leaving, the Empress asked Maria what Loana's favorite dessert was. Very soon, sweet gifts came to the heroine, and she was very interested in whether it was the Empress who sent her all this. Maria assured the girl that the Empress likes her very much, although in fact, she herself did not think that they would send so many. Among everything, a box with a bow stood out. According to the maid, there were lollipops, but since the girl had not tried it yet, the woman explained that it was a special dessert that melted in her mouth. The candies were surprisingly familiar to her. It seemed that she really ate something similar in a dream. But even though the dessert was sweet, it did not melt in her mouth. Finally, Loana was given a taste of what she would eat here for the first time. Then she felt the taste that her older friend was talking about, the sweetness, and it really spread all over her mouth. The maid also noticed that the bottle containing the sweets was made of real crystal, and this somewhat shocked the girl because it was very expensive. Crystal is not just a beautiful material, it also held mana, and this explained why the girl did not understand the reason for which a simple jar was made from such a precious material. Now assured that it was because the Empress simply adored her. Words like that confused Loana. She didn't know the reason why that woman was so nice to her. After all, she had never received anything like that. And now she wondered what would happen if she did something wrong, if that kindness disappeared. And although Maria assured that the Empress would be glad that she liked her gift, the heroine could not decide whether she really could. In the end, she hated herself precisely because she could not accept kindness. Therefore, it was decided to ask the maid for advice. The girl said that she had nothing to give in return, and therefore did not know whether she could take it just like that. This surprised Maria, and nevertheless, she gently informed that children of this age would simply accept it. But if Loana is so worried, then you can thank the Empress later. The woman also easily added that if she was also called a mother, the Empress would be simply happy, but the girl treated it as a joke. But this made her think, because they all did a lot for her, and therefore it was necessary to thank not only the Empress, but also the Crown Prince. After all, they were both very kind, and the prince behaved like a real angel, for which he could surely suffer someday. Such flattering words about her master made Maria think that they were talking about different people now. But in one moment, Loana confided that she was very surprised that they all did not hate her. The maid realized the essence of these words, and therefore sharply began to ask not to speak like that, because no one has a reason for hatred. Everyone who has seen her even once has already fallen in love, just like her. In response, the heroine admitted that she only had a title from the princess. Opposite Maria, she was the only daughter of the count, and people said that it was as if brides were lining up for her. But now she was serving Loana, and this could reflect badly on her reputation. Such thoughts did not cease to amaze the maid, because of which she assured that it was not true, and it was an honor for her to serve her. The woman took hold of the sullen girl and asked her to straighten her shoulders and look straight. You need to be confident, because the princess is the second-ranked girl in the empire, and it was not worth taking her mother into this account because that woman is just a concubine and is not part of the imperial family. In fact, the Empress is the true heir to the throne, and the prince is the next to take the throne. After all, no one would ever allow an ordinary baron's daughter to become an empress. And therefore, the only women of the imperial family are Empress Arya Belcom, and she, the princess. The girl took these words as the pure truth, and therefore agreed not to say such things again. The maid thought for a while, and in a moment expressed her idea. If it was about a gift to the Empress, then it was possible to make cookies. There was already dough in the kitchen, so all that remained was to bake. Then she was asked if she had ever eaten freshly baked cookies, and without thinking long, she noticed that the prince did not eat such. At the same moment, Maria took the child in her arms, saying that in this case, they would treat the Empress. In the end, she agreed in her head that this would be the way to thank them. They had all done a lot for her, and it was necessary to give something in return. Although there were doubts that the dish could go bad, after all, she never made cookies. But then she remembered the words of Maria and gave up such thoughts, taking a promise that she would do everything in her power and definitely thank them. When it came time to look at the result of her efforts, the heroine was not satisfied with it, although she tried very hard, but it did not turn out as expected. This was especially visible in the background of Maria, who also did the same, and it turned out very neatly and beautifully. And that's why Loana suddenly noticed that her cookies look like they can't be eaten, so it's better to throw them away right away. However, the maid assured that she does not understand the problem, because in her opinion, it is very beautiful, and the Empress will definitely like it. She understood that when she saw how the princess tried, the woman would definitely be happy, after all. Rudeon also liked to cook cookies as a child. No matter how the woman assured that everything was fine, the heroine realized that Maria simply did not want to offend her. But it is unlikely that anyone would want to receive such a terrible cookie. But the girl also reminded that it was necessary to share with someone else, although she was not sure about him. But there was nowhere to retreat. She handed the box of cookies to Adam, who, knowing that she had made it herself, was very happy about it. She was also very happy with this reaction, because it meant that her efforts were not in vain. Then Maria intervened, saying that they were also very tasty, and the lady put all her love into them. And they were also in the form of a tiger and a dog, although it should really be a lion and a cat. In one moment, the prince himself came to the sounds, wanting to know what was happening here. And then Adam, with a cheerful smile, showed the cookies that the princess had made. From the baked and deformed dough in an inexplicable shape, Rudion was a bit stunned, not knowing what to answer. But the workers were not confused and began to claim that they are very beautiful, and you should just take a closer look. Adam showed his defense as he knew how, calling it the best cookie in the world, that even his sister would appreciate it, and he never thought that there would be one that he would like so much. But the owner of the house was more skeptical about it and pointed out that Lona should still study. Then the girl realized that he didn't like it. Maria, in order to defuse the situation, asked him to be more calm about it, because it reminded him of the cookies he used to bake as a child. Such a statement shocked both the prince and the princess. He did not expect that someone would mention it, and the heroine had no idea that he could bake as terribly as she did. But the maid, regardless of the reaction, continued to remind that he really liked to make cookies in the shape of bears, and therefore it is similar to the family. Everyone present stood in shock, and the girl did not understand how it was possible to smile and mock at the same time. And after all the words, he was offered to look again and say that it is really cute. Realizing his defeat, Rudeon changed his mind, saying that if you look at it from the other side, it's not too bad, and she has talent. The way Maria easily got the right answer from the prince scared the girl a little, but he had already said that they were not very good. Then the woman turned to Loana, assured that they did a good job, but it seems that she had never made cookies before. However, she skillfully turned the words in the right direction, assured that the main thing is not skills but sincerity, and looking at the two of them, she remembered the past. Then Loana, without thinking, declared that she would try and eventually become better than her brother, and this last word made the boy stop in place. Then the heroine realized that she didn't follow her words again, and now she called the crown prince her brother, because of which he might get angry. She decided to apologize as soon as possible, but tears began to form in her eyes, which she could not control. But the reaction she was preparing for did not happen, and he took the girl in his arms and confirmed with a smile that he was indeed her brother. It was hard for her to believe that this person saw her as a sister. Instead of scolding her, everyone just smiled, and even the prince said he was her brother. After all, they were all very nice. The heroine fell asleep right in her arms, because of which she had to be carried into the room, and in the meantime it was already dark on the street. Maria explained that the girl had been working on the cookies since the very morning, so she was tired. But now it became clear that she fell asleep again, holding the hand of the one she called her brother. In the end, it became clear that from their first meeting, Rudeon felt strange. Although he knew that she was Lillian's daughter, he felt as if Loana was his sister. Looking at her, the boy understood that everything might be fine now, but with age, she might become like her mother. Suddenly, the girl grabbed him tighter and asked if he would stay with her, even if she was Lillian's daughter. And received confirmation, Rudeon assured that he will always be with her. After all, he could not simply stay away because this girl had already become a part of his family. She woke up already in her brother's arms, very shocked about this. Trying to remember yesterday's events, it became clear that yesterday they were baking cookies, and it seems that she fell asleep tiredly after that. Now looking at the prince, she noticed that they had a very similar hair color. But as soon as he opened his eyes, the heroine retreated in fright, and Rudeon noticed that she had a similar reaction again. Maria, who was already in the room, assured that the reason was that he looked scary, and she had already told him this more than once. Such words angered him somewhat, because of which the boy noticed that his maid seemed to have become bolder recently. Next, Loana attracted attention, lightly knocking her. The prince wondered if he was such a monster that should be feared because, after all, it was his arm that hurt after someone slept on it all night. He also noticed what he saw when she was already awake, and if you like looking at his face so much, then you should just say so. After all, it was impossible to follow a sleeping person like that. It looked as if the girl was plotting something, just like her. That last statement was clearly redundant, and it wasn't until Maria reminded him of it that he realized his mistake. And therefore, the boy immediately began to apologize, assuring that this was not what he wanted to say. But the heroine reacted to this somewhat differently than everyone expected, and indignantly declared that she looked exactly like him. After all, he also pretended to be asleep, so he also knew that the girl was awake, and it was even worse. She did not know at all that they had fallen asleep together. With a heavy sigh, Rudeon admitted that she was right here, and they were similar. Suddenly, the boy began to look around for something and ask where it was. Loana pointed out that this was her room, so she didn't have his stuff, but Maria assumed that he was looking for real cookies. The child explained that she didn't really bake much, so he refused it, and Maria supported the idea that Loana baked it for Adam and the Empress. So it was a pity that he didn't get such a cute cookie, which was also very delicious. Without waiting for his answer, Loana enthusiastically declared that if the prince wanted it, she would do more. She also noticed that she needed to train more because she could not think that the prince could like it so much. When the girl first came here, her main goal was survival, but now she could not imagine her future without them. All of them were kind to her, no matter what, and therefore you need to try even harder to thank everyone in the end. And to Empress Arya Belcom, in the meantime, a guest came, but she did not pay much attention to him, and offered not to even say the reason for which he came. And it was Count Chart, who came to apologize, and also to inform that his wife and daughter want to do the same, but cannot get into the palace. That's why now he came to ask her permission, because Selena is an obedient girl who just listens to her mother, but now she is in tears every day. And that's why the father asked her to forgive her, assuring that he would teach the girl manners. In the end, the woman agreed to forget it, citing the fact that Selena was still a child and she was apparently too hot at the time. Very soon, the daughter did appear, and immediately went to the Empress in her arms, assuring her that she was very sorry and she was like her own mother to her. And Arya, meanwhile, looking at her, understood that Loana, against her background, looks very small. They sat down to tea, and the girl, calling the woman mother, assured her that it was very tasty. But the Empress herself kept thinking about Loana, who also likes sweets. She couldn't stop comparing them, and it was bad. In a moment, a maid entered the room and informed that the lady had brought a gift from Princess Loana as a sign of gratitude. The woman was clearly happy to accept it, and she was especially pleased that a lonely girl did it for her. Selena was shocked by such a reaction because a woman had never smiled at her like that before, and that made her very angry. So she ventured to comment that the princess looked like she was doing this for the first time, and the cookie was burnt, so it couldn't be eaten, which meant that the sender didn't think about it at all. And therefore, Selena stood up sharply and pushed the box to the ground, with the statement that she would not dare to insult the Empress like that, and it was necessary to get rid of it. The reaction was not long in coming, and the Empress noticed that she believed that the girl understood her mistakes. And that's why she now said that if Selena dares to say something about that child again, she will never be forgiven. And immediately after these words, the girl was ordered to leave here. And although she asked for forgiveness in tears, all the woman's attention was focused on the cookies that fell to the ground. To this day, she remembered the first meeting with her aunt when she was introduced and asked to say hello. As soon as their eyes met, Selena excitedly declared that she was very beautiful after all. She also wanted to be just as brilliant. From that moment, it became her dream, and therefore she visited the woman at every opportunity, trying to be as close as possible so that she would consider her her daughter. And everything was fine until this meeting, until her aunt refused her. Later, she met other young ladies, and one of them came closer. Noticed that it looked like a noble niece of the Empress, who sobbed like that in public. But when she was asked to follow the words, she assumed that Selena was talking to the Empress in the same way, and therefore it is not surprising that she kicked her out. And this made her incredibly angry, and therefore sharply ordered not to say such a thing if she does not know, because she is her beloved niece. But this did not scare the lady, and she noticed that earlier, Selena considered herself a part of the Emperor's family, and it was quite funny. After all, she received only a drop of attention from the ruler, but she had already decided to be a princess, so it was time to return to reality. In her opinion, Princess Luana will be horrified when she finds out about this. As it turned out, the girl accidentally overheard the conversation of the maids, and they said that the Empress took care of her like her own daughter, and she even baked cookies for the woman, and it was quite nice. Embarrassed, Selena left the company, not wanting to hear about Luana. They dared to make fun of her. They believed that she was incapable of anything without her aunt. Be that as it may, her aunt had never smiled at her like that. It seems that the girl, because of her title, believed that she could be better than her. But she was very close to her dream. There was still quite a bit left. But Selena had no intention of giving up. She was not going to lose to some princess out there. Returning home, the girl immediately turned to her father to ask the Empress to expel Princess Luana, because he could do it. After all, he was the Empress's cousin, so he could do it. The girl began to complain to the man, asking whether it was because she was not her daughter that she could not be near, and whether it would not be better for the family if she stayed with the Empress. Since the morning, Arya and Emma have not slept. She was very interested in what Lillian's reaction would be, since the maids were still looking for the princess. Nevertheless, everyone had been ordered to remain silent, so they still did not know where she was. In the end, the responsibilities for the budget will soon be transferred, and it remained to decide who will be her guardian. With this question, it is worth going to Rudion. On the same day, the heroine was noticeably surprised when, returning to the room, she saw how Maria had brought a bunch of different clothes. The woman assured that she would explain everything later, but now you need to choose what you like more. As it turned out, the maid brought clothes that she herself had worn as a child, but it was still not enough. So, a little later, they would call the tailors and sew her many beautiful outfits. Luana understood that the situation was quite strange, because it would be better to call the tailor right away. But maybe Maria just didn't want anyone to see the bruises on her body. In this case, everything became clear. Very soon they will have to go to the Empress for dinner, so said the prince. Also, the woman decided to tell her something on the secret, which she heard from Emma, that Her Majesty was very touched by this gift, and said that it was the best cookie she had ever tried. But in any case, Maria now wanted the princess to look her best, so she had to choose something from that. All of them were very beautiful, and therefore the choice was not easy. But very soon the girl saw something that interested her. The maid, as always, supported the girl's choice, saying that she also thought it was very cute. While the woman was preparing the outfit, the heroine said sadly that she had no money at all. However, judging by the words of Maria, there was no reason to worry, because the crown prince is very rich, as the past emperor left him a huge inheritance. It was pleasant for the girl, but somewhat confusing in the end. They did too much for her, and therefore she wanted to help them somehow. But in any case, it was necessary to get dressed as soon as possible, since there was little time. But the heroine did not understand whether she could even go to the Empress's palace. After all, her mother, but did not have time to agree, as Maria agreed that the Empress is also the mother of Princess Luana. Even if she wasn't her biological mother, Luana was a princess after all, which meant she was the daughter of an empress. These words calmed the child, and therefore she caught herself saying that she would not be afraid anymore, because it is at least not respectful to them. Very soon, the preparations were practically completed, and the heroine could not recognize herself in the mirror. While Maria was going through her things, she was looking for some special red shoes. And as soon as the girl heard the name of this color, she immediately remembered for a moment that terrible room where she died in her sleep. She refused it, but at the same moment, Rudion suddenly appeared behind her, who assured her that she could not wear it if she didn't like it. However, Maria noticed that the lady cannot walk without shoes. However, the prince had another idea, and if someone will carry it in their hands, then shoes will not be needed. The maid did not give up, and while showing the shoes, assured that they were beautiful, but Rudeon refused. Since they were already waiting for them, it was necessary to go, but the maid offered to think about everything once more. This time, Adam intervened and asked her to stop insisting, because it was necessary to notice how Loana got scared when she saw the shoes. After these words, he left her, and the woman remained alone, hoping that one day the girl would open up to them. On the way to the street, the prince still asked his sister if she didn't like those shoes so much. But the point was not that when she saw this coloring. Before she could finish, Rudeon, understanding the situation, announced that from this day on, he would not see any red. However, the heroine still could not accept all this kindness, so she asked not to try so hard for her sake. But the prince, as always, had his own opinion. He asked her to remember that she is a princess, so no one would dare to tell her what to do. And it was even about her mother. Lillian would never come here, but even if it happened, he would protect her. This opinion was also supported by Adam. In response, the heroine began to laugh lightly, being impressed that she used to be afraid of everything. But now the fear is gone. The Empress's palace was the most visited place in the district, and all because she does most of the emperor's work. As soon as the prince entered inside with the girl in his arms, he immediately became the object of discussion. No one could think that this was the same hereditary prince known for his cruelty. Later, that girl was recognized as Princess Loana, and judging by her appearance, she really inherited the emperor's blood. From all these views, as expected, the girl became very uncomfortable, and Rudeon saw this, and therefore offered to get rid of them because she was clearly annoyed by these looks. But in one moment, she saw a surprisingly familiar man and wondered who he was, and he turned out to be Duke Yespan. But among the crowd, there was another woman who, seeing the princess, realized that she should hurry and warn Mrs. Lillian. Having gone inside, the heroine could not fall in love with the local beauty because this palace looked very majestic. The guy explained to her that the first empress was actually an elf. She was of the elven race, after persistent courtship of the emperor, and finally agreed to marry him. The emperor was so happy that he gave orders to build a beautiful palace, which will not be equaled. When asked if elves really exist, the prince confirmed, adding that they try not to show themselves to people, but thanks to the first empress, their family has preserved ties, so later it will be possible to get to know each other. The heroine was very interested in this and began to enthusiastically ask when they could meet. In response, Rudeon pointed out that, at this time of the year, a banquet is held. But suddenly, he was interrupted by the voice of a woman who assured her that she was glad to see the princess and would like to see them off. A little later, Rudeon, having already recognized her, asked to be warned before approaching. And the woman's name was Taryn, who explained with a smile that they just looked very cute, and that's why she didn't want to disturb them, which is why she decided to just watch. As soon as they found out that the Empress was already waiting for them at the table, the girl assumed that they were late. However, the elderly maid assured that they had arrived even earlier, so there was no reason to worry. And again, the heroine had a very strange feeling. She was the daughter of a concubine, so she believed that she should be hated, but the woman was very kind, just like Emma, Maria, and the Empress. In the end, she didn't understand how such people could be used at all. She didn't want to do it, but she had to, for the sake of survival. At the entrance to the hall, the boy noticed that she was nervous again, so he assured her that her mother was not going to do anything to her, so she had no reason to worry. But the real cause of concern was that she still did not know how to address her. And as soon as they entered inside, the woman told her son that he should speak more softly to his sister. He came closer. The girl quietly asked her brother what she should say now. But the Empress, having just looked at the girl, declared that she was simply beautiful and asked the assistant how a child could be so beautiful in general. In the end, they sat down, and Loana assumed that their relationship had become better, which he probably didn't like very much. At that moment, the maid asked the prince if he would keep the princess like that because a separate soup had been prepared for her, but he did not mind. In a few seconds, the woman did notice that the heroine was barefoot, and therefore asked her son why, to which he assured that he was carrying her in his arms, and therefore there was no need for this. So far, he thought that it was not necessary to tell the whole truth. In the end, the dishes were brought out and placed in front of the people. The Empress saw how the girl looked at the dish in front of her and offered to try it. The boy understood the hint and began to carefully feed his younger sister with a tasty dish. And the mother just looked enviously, realizing that she also wanted to feed her, and therefore she carefully offered her dessert, noting that she should like it. But at the same moment, a butler suddenly burst into the room, announcing that they were in trouble. As it turned out, a concubine came who dared to appear without an invitation. The prince looked at him from the side of his head and said that there is an important guest here, so let him wait. But the girl had her own opinion, and assured that if it was about her mother, then she would like to stay. At that moment, Empress Arya sat down next to them and asked them to trust them and just wait here, because she really wanted to spend time with her daughter, whom she had not seen for so long. Now she realized that her mother had never actually called her that, so she finally agreed, and even now she felt at ease. Having calmed the girl down, the Empress became more serious and prepared for this unpleasant meeting. When the maid explained the situation to the concubine, she was clearly not happy about such a terrible coincidence, because as soon as she received the document, the crown prince brought Loana to the Empress's palace. Then the servant was ordered to read it again, and with horror she began to read a document called the Empress's Budget. And it stated that from this day on, by all means, the Empress's palace would be managed, and she would also be responsible for everything that happened. Be that as it may, Lillian did not show her anger at the moment, and simply inquired where the maids were now. They did not even know that the girl had run away, but if she had reported in time, this would not have happened, and therefore it is necessary to punish her instead of them. As soon as the maid left the room, a cup of tea immediately flew in her direction. She was now beside herself with anger, not understanding how she even dared to run away to the Empress, and therefore as soon as she returned, she would be punished. At the same moment, a man approached her and asked what had happened, and this was the Emperor, who was now being assured that everything was in order and that he had no reason to worry. She lightly put her hand on his face and asked him to sleep a little more, and at the same moment, the husband fell asleep. Nevertheless, Liliana was filled with anger. She had a lot of problems because of that girl, and therefore one could only hope that she did not tell the Empress. But still, no matter what they did, she was her daughter and the little child of terrible maids. She never received an appropriate education. And so that this does not happen again, she should be turned into an obedient dog, just like the Emperor. Meanwhile, the prince intended to leave the room with the heroine, and although he claimed that she did not need to know, the girl understood that he wanted to meet her mother. Although he assured that he would return soon, Loana was ready to beg that he would not go anywhere. She understood that if the boy was not careful, then all this could end badly. The child remembered that her mother had killed her, despite the fact that she was her daughter. Now she must be angry because of the fact that she disappeared, and if the prince goes there now, he can be harmed. So now all that was left was to ask him to trust her. She could not explain the reason, but if he goes, he will be in danger. The prince suddenly lowered himself to her level, wondering if she was worried about him now, and therefore reminded her that he was stronger than he seemed, and therefore she had no reason to worry. And as soon as he left, to divert attention from this, Maria suggested that they wait together. But Loana could not wait. And the concubine was already waiting on the street, who began to complain that she was tired of waiting. And it seems that the Empress likes to mock people. In response, the maid reminded that she came without an invitation, and should be glad that they agreed to accept her at all. Such impudence annoyed her. It seems that the woman was not respected because of the fact that she is a concubine, but it was worth waiting a little when Louis becomes emperor. Then this palace will cease to exist. After some time, the Empress finally came out to the meeting, together with her son, and by the expression on her face, you could understand what they were thinking about now. Lillian was confused to see the prince. She did not expect to see him here today, and as soon as he caught her eye, he mockingly assumed that she didn't seem to like the fact that he would be here with them. Nevertheless, the woman assured that she was glad to see both of them. She just did not expect his appearance. Without waiting for a long time, Arya offered to get right down to business, because unlike the guest, she was very busy. The concubine claimed that she was deprived of the right to manage her daughter's budget, and the Empress confirmed this, adding that she described everything in detail in the document. In response, Lillian said that no one has the right to do this. As her mother, she should manage the budget. But Arya believed that the owner should decide how to use the money, but not her. The guest did not give up and indignantly stated that even if it is so, but Loana is her daughter, and it cannot be ignored just like that. However, the mistress of this house had a different opinion, because Loana was considered an imperial princess, and she, as an empress, could be considered her mother. To this, the concubine pointed out that she herself gave birth and raised her, and even if the empress is now in front of her, then she has no right to be called her mother. Now, Rudeon answered, explaining that the girl did not choose her mother, and according to his observations, there was no attachment between them. But not letting him finish, Lillian denied it in despair, adding that she had already made it clear that Loana was her daughter. The woman also explained that the child brought misfortune since childhood, and therefore she could not guarantee their safety if she was not near her. The guy noticed that this could be considered a threat, and even if it was her mother, she still could not manage her daughter's budget wisely, and therefore Loana herself will not see her. He sent her a detailed report about the health of the princess and her palace. The question arose as to how all this appeared with such a huge budget. Now is the time to decide that either Lillian refuses to take care of the princess, or she will give away all the funds she has spent in 8 years. At that moment, The guest shook with anger, which later turned into laughter, after which she wondered why they were so attached to her now if they had not shown any interest for so many years. After all, people could understand wrongly, say to her face that she is kind and generous. But behind her back, gossip will follow, as if the Empress cannot forget her dead daughter, and has become an obsessed princess who is so similar to her. At the same moment, Rudion heard sounds behind him, and after checking the suspicious place, he found only a small slipper there. Exactly an hour ago, Maria entered the ladies' room, noticing that it was already noon, and she was still asleep, so she asked her not to forget to eat when she woke up. The woman thought that the child was still upset, and therefore it was better to sleep. As soon as the maid left the room, the heroine immediately got up and began to hide the toy under the blanket. She was not ready to give up so easily now. People who are kind to her can be in danger, and therefore this cannot be allowed to happen. And if she is not taken with them, then she must go herself. He carefully went outside. The girl realized that it was the first time she left the palace by herself, and therefore she did not even know where to go and where they were now. It was impossible that she would be caught, and Maria was probably starting to worry, so the heroine thought about how to return. Nevertheless, the crown prince could not be abandoned. In one moment, something unusual appeared in front of her. Some droplets began to appear in front of her eyes, and for some reason, they seemed to be followed. So she went after them, and that's why she came to the place of the conversation. She arrived at the moment when it was said that she would bring gossip that the Empress could not forget her dead daughter. At this moment, the heroine began to feel guilty that because of her, her loved ones might have problems. She came back already upset because she just wanted to survive, but after she received until now unknown love, she wanted to respond in the same way. Returning to the empty room, the child wondered if perhaps it was not worth running away because it was of no use to him. Suddenly, someone said that it was not so, and at the same moment, a girl appeared, the same adult Loana from a dream, who looked like a hallucination. The unexpected guest began to assure her that it was even good, that she did not remember everything that was in the dream, and she had already gone down another road. This was no longer her future, and therefore she had no reason to worry. After a few seconds of thinking, a confused Rudion suddenly ran into the room, who assured that he had been looking for her for a long time. Sitting next to each other, they started a conversation in which Loana explained that she did not want them to have problems with the Empress because of her. The prince pretended that he did not understand what the matter was about, and who had said such a stupid thing to her. In response, the heroine, gathering her strength, uncertainly asked if she could stay with them. Tears began to appear in the child's eyes, and the boy, in turn, declared that no matter what anyone said, he would always remain her brother, and therefore one should stop thinking about nonsense. It was only when she heard his words that Loana was finally able to calm down, and at the moment she was very grateful that she was being taken care of. When the girl woke up, she did not recognize the place where she was now, but her sleepy brother was also there, who explained that it was still early. As it turned out, while he was putting her to sleep, he fell asleep himself, and she can still sleep. In a moment, Maria carefully peeked into the room to see if the prince was still asleep, but he only asked to speak more quietly. They explained to her that the girl got up too early, and therefore it is better to let her sleep a little more. After some time, Adam brought information about the bracelet, saying at the same time that he had conducted an investigation. First, he checked the artisans who sold jewelry, and he also contacted the guild, and it turned out to be easier than it seemed to get information. A shield with a flower was the coat of arms of the Yestban family. The fact that he gave such a valuable thing to a little girl was somewhat disconcerting, because Rudeon considered Duke to be a good person. The knight agreed to this. It was necessary to watch him. And only Maria thought that they were thinking wrongly, but still they were right in something. At that time, Loana did not look like a princess, and yet they gave her such an expensive gift. And if so, then the maid pointed out that it was love, because the princess was very beautiful, and therefore perhaps the little Duke fell in love with her at first sight. Be that as it may, but Adam was ordered to find out everything about that son. He didn't like it, so you need to meet him. Meanwhile, a boy named Kiran was visited by his father, who seemed to want to talk to him. The boy immediately declared that if he was asked to attend a banquet again, he would immediately refuse. But as it turned out, the elder wanted to ask something, namely about the bracelet, which, judging by the words of the young man, he lost. In the end, the man found out who took it. This shocked Kiran, because apparently the father found out who this girl was, but no one was supposed to know what he gave to her. The man somewhat mockingly asked if he was interested, but the boy only snorted in denial and offered to leave him alone. In fact, the Duke understood how lucky he was that he and the prince had crossed paths in the investigation. It was hard to believe that the bracelet ended up with the princess, and it was good that he went to the Empress that day. That day, the man suggested to her that his son and the princess should become friends, because they had a small age difference, and the princess would not mind making friends. Arya, in the end, didn't mind, but warned that if they were left alone, misunderstandings could arise. And the Duke knew that that's why his son was the perfect match. His appearance, his family all made him the best choice for engagement. And if he did it now, other young people would stay away from the princess as much as possible. The woman realized that in the end it made sense because there were too many marriage invitations. And the guest could perfectly understand this because his son also received many invitations. And therefore they both can benefit from this. They are still children, and therefore there should be no gossip. The Empress agreed to think, and thus he already understood what to expect for good news. It was a good opportunity for the princess, and with her help, they could stop that woman. Maybe everything will not go so smoothly, but it seemed that Kiran likes the princess, and so it gave him a chance to mock the crown prince properly. Meanwhile, the boy realized that this look did not bode well for him. The heroine, meanwhile, was in her room, suffering from boredom, and in one moment she declared that she wanted to meet the Empress. But in a moment she gave up her words. Then Maria noticed that if she was so bored, then Adam should come soon, who, judging by his words, would bring a gift. While the woman was talking about this, the lady watched her carefully and realized that she looked excited when she talked about the knight. And therefore, the heroine decided to directly ask what the relationship was between them, thereby greatly embarrassing the woman. But Luana explained it by the fact that they constantly look at each other and smile at the same time, and that's why she thought they looked good together. But before she had time to hear the answer, Adam and Mr. entered the room, and therefore the heroine's attention switched to them. The girl decided to ask a question to the knight, who was about to present the gift. And to his surprise, it was not about the gift. He was asked what he thought about Maria in general, but he deftly turned around by offering to examine the gift first. At that moment, he began to stack the box one by one, assuring that he did not know what to choose, so he brought everything that she might like. In the end, the knight admitted that when he tried the cookies that the princess had made, he realized that their tastes were similar, so if she liked it, he could bring more. The fact that Adam ate all her cookies somewhat confused the girl because it was very scary, and then she finally realized that he had decided that she really liked it. The knight admitted that everything he brought was made with his own hands, and therefore he tried very hard to make everything perfect. Luana hid her fear with a bright smile, and now she thought that she should tell him about what she really likes. But if this gift was really made by his hands, it was somewhat scary to open it. While he was eagerly waiting, the princess thought about how to politely refuse it, and therefore assured her that if Adam prepared it with his own hands, then it would be rather wasteful to give it to her. But the knight immediately denied this, saying that he would only be happy if the princess accepted everything. Despite the efforts, it was worth opening, although it was scary. The brother saw the true reaction of the little girl, and therefore suggested that he should open it first. Without thinking at all, the heroine happily agreed and handed him the box, which made him surprised at such a sharp decision. Now Rudion himself began to hesitate, and therefore offered to open Maria, who already began to carefully move away from him, at the same time refusing to do so. And so that the boy did not run away from this, the maid offered the princess to watch together how the prince would open, while he mentally prepared for it. Gathering his strength, he still carefully opened the box, and everything turned out as he expected. As soon as he was asked to show what was there, Rudion abruptly handed the box to Maria, asking her to burn it as far as possible from the palace. And although Luana continued to ask to show her, the elder assured that her psyche was not yet ready for such a thing. And then there was already an appeal to the knight, and he was asked, before carrying something that he made himself, to ask his younger sister, and she would definitely give her assessment. Looking at the upset Adam, her curiosity began to bother her more and more, because after all, he was trying and cooking for her. In order to do something for him, the heroine declared that it was still a gift, and therefore she should accept it. However, the prince resolutely forbade it, ordered the maid to take everything out as soon as possible, and she commented on it, as if she thought at first that it was a doll made by Asil, but everything turned out to be even worse. I had to support the knight, at least with words of apology for this, and she also reported that every day she makes cookies better and better. And Rudion, together with Maria, agreed that next time it should be checked right away. Further, Luana began to ask the maid to show her, but she also forbade it, explaining that she would have nightmares after that. The brother assured her that he would give her something better, because not so long ago he had received one thing, and as soon as he had it, he would immediately give it to her. And this already noticeably interested her. If Rudion had already said it, then there must clearly be something very valuable. The guy explained that he bought it for his collection, so he would give it to her without any problems. Maria, thinking about it, realized that it was about that book, and therefore understood that this was a problem. She only dealt with Adam's gift here, and she no longer trusts the taste of these two. When they were alone, the heroine asked the woman's opinion about the gift, but she assured that she did not even know what could be there. To begin with, it was decided to ask if she likes to read books, to which she uncertainly stated that she herself did not know, because she had never tried. Then the woman remembered with horror that no one had ever taught her to read, because of which she felt very sorry for this poor princess. Taking her by the hand, the maid assured her that she should not worry, because you can always learn to read. Everything happens for the first time, and she will teach her. To begin with, it was worth starting with something easy, and you still need to compile a list of books from the library. The woman was so busy with this thought that she stopped listening to what the child was saying. The heroine understood that they were trying to help her now, but she could read anyway, so it was worth saying it. However, Maria was determined to teach the girl everything she doesn't know, and also to read many fairy tales to her. The fact that they were going to read to her stopped the girl from her explanations, because no one had ever read fairy tales to her. One day, when she was very sick, Loana overheard a conversation between two maids, who were discussing the strange situation that the princess was always neglected. And as long as she had a fever, the concubine read fairy tales to the second prince, so maybe the child is just attracting attention, and there is no fever in reality. In fact, it all seemed like a dream now. The fact that she couldn't write was normal, but if she said that somehow she learned to read, it would be strange. Later, the woman brought many books, which she said she would read to the princess. And she wanted to start with a book called The History of the First Emperor and the Empress. It turned out to be a love story that began with the fact that a long time ago, in one village, there lived a boy who had hair the color of the morning sun. They shone as if they were made of precious stones, just like the princesses. One day, misfortune fell on his village, and during the fight against that misfortune, a blue-eyed elf helped the boy to help. Everything was exactly as the brother said, and Maria assured that the heroine inherited the color of her eyes from the Empress. It made her think that if what she heard was true, and her eyes really were that color, then she was starting to feel more and more like a princess, and not just a girl with a title. And thus the elf boy and his childhood friend grew up. A little later, the woman stopped and asked if she still liked the story. Such a sudden end greatly surprised the girl, because there was too much unclear what happened to the village where this childhood friend came from. In the end, too many details were missing. Maria suggested that the reason for everything may be that it is simply a fairy tale. This is simply a fairy tale written based on history, and such details as the village and childhood friend could simply have been invented. But somehow, all the same, the girl felt some strangeness, especially this red-haired friend who, according to the author, greeted the couple with tears in her eyes. Was she really happy for the emperor and empress? When asked whether to read it again, Loana refused, as she remembered everything, and Maria was happy about it, adding that the first part of the story was always her favorite. At this moment, the heroine began to recount the specific moment when the boy's cheeks turned red, and emotions, which he had not expressed before, flooded in a wave. The woman was glad that the heroine remembered such a beautiful sentence, but she assured that she remembered everything, and this confused the maid. In order to make sure if it was true, Maria started flipping through the book and asked to recount a specific page and sentence. This happened for some time, and in the end the maid believed her words, and it was really amazing, because she read only once. And the child already remembered, although at her age, she was only learning to connect syllables in sentences. Well, Loana, it seems, already knew how to read, and an ordinary child was not capable of this. She was clearly a genius, which meant that she needed to find a suitable teacher. In one moment, the heroine turned to her, wondering if the kingdom from the book really existed, and she pointed now to the desert kingdom. As it turned out, they often send ambassadors to them, and therefore you could see them in the palace. In the picture, a palace was shown in the capital of Torn, as gossip said. The kingdom appeared in the place of a huge oasis. Looking at all this, Loana could not understand why all this seemed so familiar to her, and in the end, she understood that she had seen all this in a dream. Adam, meanwhile, had a conversation with his own sister, who angrily reminded him that she had already said that it was impossible to do this. The elder noticed that he thought she would like the cookies, to which Asil explained that not everyone's tastes match his, and it is unlikely that even the doll she made liked the girl, while the girl was worried that the princess would be shocked when she saw it. Adam explained that Loana didn't see anything, and Maria threw everything away as quickly as possible. The way he simply said it was rather suspicious, as there was no visible disappointment in his eyes, which could mean he didn't see it coming. In the end, the subject was closed, and then the sister decided to ask who the princess really was. Rudeon took care of her. Recently, the elder only talked about her, and Maria from Rudeon took care of her, and that's why she became interested in what she... In the end, Asil also wanted to meet with her, so the knight noticed that he could talk about this with the prince. Of course, there were some problematic moments, but he can manage everything. Probably after they choose a maid and a guard, they will be able to meet. So far, all this was done by Maria, and it greatly shocked the girl, because it turned out that the woman was doing all the work in the crown prince's palace. The knight could not answer the question where the elder maid was. Then the girl pointed at Lillian, calling her a witch, but when her brother asked her to stop, Asil exploded in anger, declaring that she could not accept the fact that that woman was walking around the palace freely. It was because of her that they lost their father. Everyone knew very well that only she was to blame for this. But the problem was that they had no evidence. At one point, Adam pointed out that it should be understood that the princess is not wrong, to which the sister pointed out that if she had known, she would not have accepted her doll. At one point, she developed a severe headache, and her brother helped her sit up on the bed. After all, she hadn't been so angry for a long time, but in any case, you need to look for a maid of honor among the higher aristocracy. Nevertheless, Asil assured her that she was fine, and you shouldn't worry so much about her. Later, Adam explained to the gentleman that the doctors said that everything was fine with her, so all that was left was to get permission from the prince. But he thought that the sister should choose herself who would eventually become her maid of honor. Also, the boy asked how Asil was doing, and the knight gloomily noticed that everything was fine. After the incident when she fell in the palace, the doctors said that everything was fine. This meant that they simply did not see the problem, but in any case, she was much better than before. In that case, Rudeon agreed to visit her along with Loana. And yet, Adam was a little worried about whether it was possible to take the princess outside the palace, no matter how cool it was. But Lillian had often tried on him in the past. The prince reminded that it was many years ago. Now everything is quite quiet, and even at that time, there was no such attention to her. Now a woman would not dare to do something similar. However, he was worried about something else that day. That woman had a very frightening look. This time, Lona was under the full protection of the Empress, and all her mother's plans had failed. He could understand that not all parents love their children, but this was simply impossible to accept. In any case, there is no reason to worry, because the guy will appoint more people to accompany him, because caution will not hurt. At that moment, Maria entered the room and explained that the Empress wanted to see him. As it turned out, Arya wanted to talk about a friend. In her opinion, the girl needed a friend of some kind. The son finally agreed, but added that he does not necessarily have to be from the Yestban family. However, there was not much to choose from. Most of the young people are already too old for Loana, so this is now the best option. And even so, Rudeon assured that it is impossible to force a girl and a boy to be friends, because various gossips can spread. But the mother noticed that if she had been afraid of this at the time, she would not have agreed to see Asil with Maria. The prince understood that Duke Yestban seems to be behind all this. The other day, he showed a clear interest in the princess, and it seems that he is using his son in his personal interests. While the boy was thoughtfully silent, the mother suddenly assumed that her son had become jealous. Then Emma was already interested in the opinion, and she fully supported this opinion. Be that as it may, the prince was not going to accept this provocation. However, the woman explained that Loana cannot stay in her son's palace forever, and therefore the Empress would like to give her the Gloria Palace. Gloria Palace is a castle that is located between the house of the Empress and the Crown Prince. It is a palace made of the purest marble. Everyone considers it an honor to live there, and that is why it got such a name. And also, this palace should have been received. Rudeon's sister died, and in this way the girl could visit her more often, and Arya will be happy if she lives there. The boy didn't think long and said out loud that if his mother didn't mind, he wouldn't mind either. The Empress assured that she understands what her son is thinking about now, but you can be calm because she treats her like that, not because she is trying to replace her child. She just really wanted that child to find its place. Loana, meanwhile, found herself in some unfamiliar place. The last thing she remembered, she was in bed, but now she was in some dark place. In one moment, she felt that there was something in her mouth, and it was something sweet. Maybe it was the same dessert she wanted to try. At the same second, someone asked if she liked him. But as soon as the heroine asked who it was, the stranger began to disappear. In the end, she woke up all sweaty, where Maria was already waiting for her, to whom it was explained that the girl had a bad dream. Judging by the tears in her eyes, the woman assumed that it really was horror. Then the girl hugged her and asked her not to go anywhere without saying a word. Duke Yestban, meanwhile, had a conversation with his wife, whom he assured that something wonderful had happened, and a letter from the Empress came to them. He gave it to the woman to read, asking her not to worry, because it was from the Crown Prince. After a short reading, she realized that their son would become a friend of Princess Loana. The man reminded him that the princess now lived in the prince's palace. And it was true. After all, he personally saw him return there with the girl in his arms. But he also refused the request of a concubine, as he believed that it would only be better that way. The woman was also worried that her son might not like her, but the man was more calm about it. This made her think that both the princess and the second prince were after all the children of the concubine. But if the princess is so close to the crown prince and empress, it means that she can be on their side. The man heard that they often go to the empress, and it seems that she has already become her guardian, and the son of the Arsian family is close to the crown prince, and in the future they will be able to get close to the imperial family. The wife felt that it was not only about this, and therefore asked to tell more about all this. There was to be a reception today, and she would need to tell something. But first the Duke wanted to say that the concubine was no longer the princess's guardian, and she would also need to convince her son to become her friend. As long as they mentioned the boy, he was in the gazebo and sneezed, realizing that he was being mentioned in the same way now, and he didn't like it. A new day has come and new books to read, which the girl surprisingly read quickly, and therefore she wondered if there was anything else. But it was the last one Maria had prepared. The woman promised to find more later, and until then, the heroine could go for a walk in the garden, since the weather was beautiful there now. Luana was delighted with what was outside. It was the first time she had seen anything like it. In the end, her mother did not allow her to leave the room, and therefore there was no opportunity to look at it. But the maid understood that it was simply a garden, and Lillian's actions continued to confuse her. In one moment, the woman embraced the heroine, declaring that even if that person gave birth to her, it does not mean that she should consider her a mother. Luana understood that Maria began to cry. She did not know the reason, but she did not want the woman to cry at all. She wanted her face to always be adorned with a smile. Her mother died immediately after the birth of her daughter. But everything was not so bad because the father did everything to replace her mother, although it was difficult to raise the child himself. Now Maria cried every time she remembered him. In the end, he died while performing the duties of an imperial knight. The woman always loved him very much, and that is why she will be proud until the end of her days. Thinking a little, the girl assumed that it was about Lillian, and if it was true, then she did not know how to even look into her eyes. The maid pulled her out of her thoughts and asked her that if someone told her strange things, she should not listen to him, because she and everyone else loved her very much. With sad eyes, Luana understood as much as the person next to her was good, and listening to all this, she had no right to ask for more. This was also watched by the men of the house who watched silently. Rudeon didn't think he would ever hear such a thing. On that bad day, not only Maria's father died, but also Adam's father. The knight saw the sadness in the eyes of the master and remembered what he had already said, as if he had never been angry about it, and that was the case with the princess. In the end, it would be ugly to get into this moment of weakness, so it was decided to leave them. Rudeon couldn't understand something. Because they accepted her so easily, it seemed to him that he was simply taking advantage of their kindness. But in a moment, he gave up this idea. He understood that from the very beginning, only Liliana was to blame. Meanwhile, the girls began to enjoy the flowers, and the girl liked it very much. For this reason, Maria decided to show her something, and in a few skillful movements, she made a ring from the stem of a flower. The heroine was delighted with this, to which the maid offered her to do it herself, because it was not difficult at all. The result turned out to be worse than Luana expected from the beginning. But since the woman was busy at that moment with a similar activity, the heroine decided not to show it to her, but to simply throw it away and try again. In the end, the woman finished work on a beautiful beauty, which turned out to be a wreath that would decorate the princess's head. In this way, the girl looked like a fairy, and in turn she gave a flower ring, which turned out to be successful. In this form, she returned to the room, where, having met her brother, she informed that this wreath was made for her by Maria. The woman herself boasted that the princess had made her a ring, which she was very happy about. Adam did not hold back and asked to do the same for him the next time, to which the cunning Luana assured that she would make them a pair of rings. Also, looking at Rudion's face, which showed no emotions, the girl decided that he was angry with her. And that's why she asked directly if he was angry because she plucked his flowers, to which he declared that he had no reason to be angry, but he needed to tell something about her palace. Luana immediately became gloomy because she knew only one palace of hers from which she escaped, and this could mean that they wanted to bring her back. The guy said that she cannot stay in his palace forever, and this was a blow for her. He came closer. The heroine uncertainly asked why she couldn't stay here, because she didn't want to come back, and she was told that it was only her room now. At that moment, Luana assumed that she was hated here because of her mother, and therefore began to ask not to expel her, assured that she would not interfere, only that he would not send her back. Rudion understood what was going on. Her reactions seemed strange to him from the very beginning, and now it became clear that he was misunderstood. Gently putting his hand on her head, he assured her that this was not the palace she was thinking about, and that when the girl saw it, she would definitely like it. When asked if she had heard of the Gloria Palace, she noticed that it was about the one made of white marble. If she already knew about it, then later it will be possible to tell about it in more detail. But in the future, the princess will live there. But the heroine did not understand whether anyone who got there could use it, but the brother assured that no matter how beautiful he was, the princess could live there. Every time the mother cursed the Empress, she remembered that palace, which, as if because of some daughter who died there, The palace has been empty for so many years. In the end, they were simple excuses not to give the palace to her. Even the maids were whispering about it, that some maid wanted to get the Gloria Palace, and it was very funny. The mother, more than anything, wanted to get that place because it was indeed beautiful, prepared by the Empress for her daughter, and therefore Loana did not believe that she was worthy of it because it was a place for a real princess. It belonged to the late daughter of the Empress and Rudion's own sister, and therefore she had no right to occupy it. In the end, the girl accepted the idea that she had stolen her place as a reality, because of which she believed that if that girl had been alive, her brother would not have treated her with such kindness. It seems that Rudion sensed the thoughts that were overwhelming his sister, and therefore asked her not to think too much because the Gloria Palace is now the best of the unoccupied houses, and that is why her mother chose it for her. If she likes it there, then she can stay, but if not, then he will find someone else. In the end, the boy wanted her to find her place, so he asked her to think about whether they could go and look at that. These words calmed her, although she still understood that it was possible and was her replacement, but there were things she did not want to part with. While they were on the street, the brother also noticed that he was going to introduce her to a friend soon, and he should tell her right away if she didn't like the idea. But the heroine was not against it, although she was a little worried that he might not like it. But as soon as she saw the older man's reaction, she began to make excuses that she was just considering all the options. Rudion said that he would have to be a complete fool to think about her like that, but if someone does something like that, he should be told right away. But no matter what, she knew her position very well. Despite the fact that that boy gave her a bracelet, she was still considered Lillian's daughter. Even Louis was looked upon as an obstacle, so she must be looked upon with hatred. In the end, they reached the palace where the girl can live. She liked the place very much, and yet her brother offered to tell him if there was anything she didn't like, and he would find the right people. But Loana, in turn, said that everything is beautiful here, and therefore there is no need to change anything. For some time, they still argued on this account, but in the end, the prince admitted defeat and assured that he would not change anything, so he also made a promise. In a moment, Maria suddenly appeared and asked to be careful with promises, because no one knew what would happen in the future. As it turned out, the maid was busy here with some business and therefore suggested that they go and have a look. The three of them continued their inspection of the palace, and it came to the fountain, which had not yet been completed. Despite all the words, the girl went to the fountain in which the water ended up. All that the heroine felt at that moment was that the water was cool and refreshing. However, the adults present were shocked by what they saw, because they could not even understand what had just happened. Now it was possible to hire summoner elves, albeit with great difficulty, but in ancient times, people could also summon spirits. A long time ago, it was explained to the prince that he himself would understand everything when he became emperor, and he would learn the reason why his mother could not ascend the throne. Only a chosen member of the imperial family could summon spirits. Maria immediately began to ask about this phenomenon of the prince, but he asked to speak about it more quietly, explaining that sometimes there were those who inherited abilities from distant ancestors, but the girl did not use them, but rather just played, not realizing the elastic power. The maid noticed that fortunately there was no one else here, and the prince understood that he would have a hard time when he had to choose servants. The woman was asked not to tell anyone about what she saw here, but she did not think of doing anything like that. The reason was that they might stumble, and then it would not be easy to protect the princess. While they were discussing this, Loana was playing so hard that she accidentally fell into the water. Fortunately, nothing terrible happened, and the heroine explained it by the fact that until this moment everything was in order, but next time she will behave more carefully. At that moment, invisible to others but perfectly perceptible to the heroine, a small stream hid behind her. In the end, it was decided to go to the palace and change clothes, which made her ask if they were going back to her brother's palace. But everything turned out differently, and the prince asked if she didn't want to look around in her own palace at all, and Maria, in turn, noticed that Gloria's palace always seemed to maintain the right temperature, and before the girl had time to be surprised, she suddenly sneezed. It became clear that she was cold, so her brother gave her his clothes, and Maria decided to go get other clothes, and she was also asked to call Adam. When asked where they were going, the boy briefly said that he was going to the room. Now Loana understood that if this palace became her home, she would have to live here, and she and her brother would no longer be able to see each other every day. And this thought made her very sad. When it was time to enter her new room of her own, the little girl was delighted. It was very beautiful here, and she liked it, but she couldn't change her mind so quickly. According to the reaction, the prince asked if she didn't like it, assured her that it would be possible to make a room in another place. But that was not the point. If she moves here, it will mean that she won't be able to see her brother often anymore. But he took it more calmly and noticed that his palace was nearby, so he could come whenever he wanted. She was convinced that she wouldn't be able to move here right away anyway, as she needed to do some minor repairs and hire people. so she had no reason to worry. While the girls went to change clothes, the prince and Adam began to discuss what happened not long ago, namely about spirits. Rudion, I would only be glad if the sister turned out to be a summoner, but nothing could be said for sure now. So I asked if Adam's mother knew something about it. But as it turned out, the woman has not been very talkative lately, so he suggested asking the Empress. But the prince was very doubtful about this because a few years ago something happened. Rudion quietly peeped into the mother's conversation with the elf and heard how he spoke about the curse and about the fact that somewhere there is a mediator that they cannot find. It happened at the time when Assel fell ill. It was decided to send the knight to the doctor to look for the old records. No matter what the problem was, he even gave a sign because it was necessary to find all the documents, and it was necessary to protect them in the library. They had to find out if there were other people with the same symptoms as Assel. Left alone, Rudeon thought that if Asil's symptoms were not an illness but a curse, then maybe Loana was also cursed, and there was only one person capable of such a thing. But first he should see his mother. The Empress herself was talking with Emma at the moment and asked her if her daughter was still sick, but she noticed that it had become better recently, but she did not have time to conclude as a lady. She assured that she understood everything, but they could not accuse her without evidence. Meanwhile, Loana accused her brother of wearing the same shirt, although he assured that he wore it for the first time. Maria supported this opinion, offering to do the wardrobe because all his outfits are very similar to each other. But now it was not so important, because the maid was still going to complain that she was tired of dressing the princess in the same clothes. As it turned out, those dresses are not only old, but also long out of fashion. The woman explained that the problem now was not in money, but in seamstresses and time. She was looking for a master all over the capital. But those who could be trusted were busy in the end. While they were solving all the issues, they had no time at all for clothes. And therefore it was decided to notify everyone as possible, because on behalf of the imperial family, the prince ordered all tailors and designers to appear in the imperial palace. The maid offered to think carefully, because of such an order, they would have to cancel all their orders, but the prince was adamant now. Maria understood that they never used power for personal purposes, and therefore enthusiastically inquired whether it was possible to use the power of the crown prince. Now it was said that the boy would put a seal, because an imperial letter with his seal could significantly speed up the process. With the same shining eyes, the woman asked the princess not to worry because she would buy her many beautiful clothes. In the end, the woman hurried to carry out the order immediately, and the girl sincerely did not understand what was so fun about buying clothes. And as soon as they were alone, Rudeon gave her his hand, wondering if she liked it here, and Loana confirmed it, but worried that she might be unworthy of this place. It was very beautiful. So much so that it was even shameful to compare it with her past palace. However, the brother, without hesitation, declared that only she is worthy to live here, and therefore from this moment on, this is her palace. Later, during another reading, Maria asked the princess if she thought about taking lessons from teachers instead of reading. Since the girl was not familiar with this term, she explained that these are people who studied a specific field in depth. Of course, you shouldn't force yourself to study, but given her love of reading, the woman thought that it wasn't such a bad idea. In the end, a visiting professor from the academy could become an excellent teacher for her. At the same moment, the heroine's face twisted in sadness, and she wondered if it was necessary at all. Every time she heard about something related to training, shivers went through her whole body. Maybe it had something to do with the memories from the dream, but the girl felt discomfort, and she couldn't do anything about it. But in order not to disturb the maid, the girl with a strained smile suggested to start studying later. When the woman told the prince everything, she added that she thought the princess would like this idea, because she had memorized the book, having read it only once. Rudion suggested that perhaps she was simply afraid that if she failed, the other nobles would look down on her because of her mother. And that's why you shouldn't insist on learning. Let the child decide what to do. After all, Loana is a princess, and all nobles, regardless of title, must please her. The boy could understand this concern, but still, it was not worth insisting that she was not to her liking. Maria mentally agreed with those words. Princess Loana is a member of the imperial family, and no matter what she does, the nobles must respect her position, and therefore it seems that she is really putting too much pressure on her. The prince could not look at this depressed state of his friend, and therefore called Adam, who was also visibly surprised by the woman. When asked how things were going with the dress for Loana, the maid confirmed that everything would be ready tomorrow, and in the end, the prince himself gave the order. Later, a woman named Madame Belle entered the place where the seamstresses worked, and she was very interested in who was booked for tomorrow. But she did not have time to hear the answers, as she ordered to cancel immediately. And it does not matter that they worked on it all night, because a special order came to them. While other employees were watching the lady, who was looking for something in confusion, one of them asked Jessie what happened. As it turned out, The order stated that a dress should be made for Princess Loana and delivered to the palace by tomorrow. It was a letter from the imperial family, as well as with the prince's seal. After thinking about it, they realized that the thing seems to be about the 8-year-old daughter of a concubine who, despite her young age, seems to appear in public. In this case, this was their chance, so it is necessary to immediately reduce all manufactured clothes to children's sizes. Everyone was fussing, except Jessie, who had never sewn anything like this before, so she wasn't sure if it was too much of an honor for her. A dress for a princess is an opportunity to fulfill a dream, so you should pray that she wears this dress, at least once. The next day, Rudian was visibly surprised to see his mother standing next to Loana. When asked how she got here, the mother pointed out that she was alone. Her son would definitely not be able to choose everything by himself. At that moment, he realized that it was about the dress, and therefore he really wanted to ask Maria how it happened. In a few seconds, suspicions fell on Adam, who at first denied everything, but later admitted that it happened unintentionally. Just during a conversation with Asil, the Empress entered. Rudian planned to do all this in secret, avoiding unnecessary noise, but he could not think that his mother would come to participate. But what worried him more than anything now was that his sister was now sitting calmly and eating, although not so long ago she was uncomfortable. However, now the girl calmly accepted sweets from the Empress, and no bad emotions were visible on her face. The child didn't even look at him, and it was annoying for some reason, and Maria unexpectedly noticed that he seemed jealous. Such a statement shocked him. But without waiting for a reaction, the maid offered to finally begin. Designers began to come out in turn, presenting their products to members of the imperial family. Rudian liked the first option, and he noticed that from the very beginning, it seems that they will show the most exquisite outfits. It was decided to take a closer look at this option, which is why the girls were brought into the room. As it turned out, they came here to try on the outfit. So if the girl doesn't like how the dress looks on the model, then you have to say so. As soon as the girl put on the proposed dress, it was difficult to look away from her. When asked if she liked it, she agreed without thinking. But my brother was more skeptical about it and asked what exactly she liked, because it was noticeable that she didn't even look. And in general, he was interested in why the mother came and made the girl nervous. But when she personally asked Loana if she was worried because of her presence, the heroine immediately denied it. At that moment, the prince looked away indignantly, and Loana was given another chance to say whether she was really uncomfortable here. But she assured that she had never seen anything like this before, and it was amazing. In general, last time she was indeed a little uncomfortable, but now she felt surprisingly calm. The Empress treated her very well, and it was impossible to push her away like that, and therefore she happily confirmed that everything was in order. And as soon as the woman wanted to pat the child on the head, the son decided to do it earlier. Because of this, the woman was somewhat indignant at him, and the Empress also wondered if in front of her was really the same crown prince who ruthlessly expelled the second prince. But as long as they talked about it, they attracted the attention of those present. Then all eyes shifted to the heroine, and everyone began to discuss that she is the child of a concubine, but the Empress treats her so well. It was necessary to immediately switch her attention to something else, and the present dresses could become such. Without thinking for a long time, the girl pointed to a random dress and declared that she liked it. Then everyone really started looking at the dresses and asking which one they liked. Suddenly, another designer burst in, and with the words that the princess has a wonderful insight, she showed her dress, explaining that it is possible that the fabric looks simple, but it magically shone when the light played with precious stones. Brother confirmed that the dress really looks good if, of course, they were talking about him. And this time, when the model wore the dress, the heroine was much more delighted than in the previous product. The woman was then asked for her name, and she introduced herself as Belia Ospe, and she was ready to do all she could to make Her Majesty comfortable in her dresses. In the end, it was decided to look at her first of all. Meanwhile, Liliana's concubines reported this information, and the fact that they were all now in the Crown Prince's palace annoyed her a lot. But what annoyed the concubine more was that they all dared to ignore her completely. In the end, when she was leaving, no one even looked in her direction, and Loana was still clinging to that fool. Out of the corner of her eye, the woman saw a wound on the maid, and it attracted her attention, for which she, although stammering, thanked for the care. And this was the right reaction. If she wanted to please the lady, then she should behave nicely, because only then you can get everything you want. But the maid was scared to death at that moment. The screams of the other maids still clearly sounded in her head, and it seems that they died, because they were taken to the basement. But she herself did not do anything wrong. In the end, no one helped her when her family was dying. Now she was completely alone in this world, and therefore she had to survive no matter what. And the fitting of dresses continued, and time after time something was wrong. In the end, everyone except Loana herself was doing the choosing, and that made the whole thing very tiring. At first it was even fun, but after sitting for a long time, her legs managed to swell. The prince was the first to realize that his sister was tired, so he turned to his mother, but she asked not to distract him because she was busy at the moment. But despite this, he noticed that Luana was tired, then it was decided to take a break, and those who had nothing more to show could leave. But those present did not want to leave, and asked to be allowed to stay until the end. Belia did not consider herself one of those others. She perfectly understood that those who seemed to be very eager to know the taste of the Empress, and therefore do not want to leave so soon, in the end, such a chance may not happen again. Today the clothes were chosen by the Empress and the Crown Prince, but their goal was not them but Princess Luana, who now seemed to want to leave this place. While Arya was busy looking through the catalog, the heroine quietly slipped away, and meeting Maria on the way, asked her not to expose her. In the end, they went to a quiet room, which the heroine was very happy about, and although from the very beginning everything was fine, but now it seemed that the Empress and Madame Belle would manage on their own. The woman offered to take a break, so you can wait a little in the garden until she brings something to eat. They were talking now about that garden with flowers. It was not far away, so she could go there herself. A girl went there with thoughts about general fatigue, and understanding that it would be better to choose without these disguises. After walking a little more, she heard sounds and decided that Maria had already come. But in a moment, everything became incredibly quiet. It was not Maria, but someone else, but there must be a guard around the palace, and yet there were those who could enter. The first thought was that it was Lillian, when suddenly a sound was clearly heard behind. There was a man who twisted a woman, and he noticed that it might be strange, but he is one of the Imperial Knights. And his name was Selvan Arsian. He only recently returned to the capital after a short absence. The girl heard this name in the palace. The maids often boasted that he smiled at them, the Windy Knight, who now assured her that she should not be ashamed to call him simply by his first name. But to begin with, she was interested in who this person was, to which the man noticed that he would take care of her right now because he was a criminal. However, the princess ordered her to be released immediately, assuring her that everything was fine. After that, she started asking the stranger who she was, why, and assured her that she had made a mistake and asked for forgiveness now. But before forgiving, she needed to know the reason for the concession. As it turned out, the woman plucked flowers that her late mother loved very much, and therefore just wanted to look at them up close and had no bad intentions. Suddenly, Selvan pointed out that this is a lie because these flowers are a gift from elves. They could be seen only inside the palace, with the exception of the case when they are a gift from someone from the imperial family. In the house of a commoner, this simply could not happen. The woman, with tears in her eyes, began to assure that she was not lying, and in the end the heroine ordered to let her go. The knight did not understand the reason, because this person dared to steal the imperial property. But the heroine felt that what this person was saying was not a lie. She felt more resentment than fear. The girl asked her name, and it turned out to be Jessie, who works in Madame Belle's atelier. Without thinking long, the heroine herself plucked a bunch of flowers and handed it to the woman as an apology. The man assured that they could not simply let go of the one who attempted to steal the property of the imperial family. But the princess said that she just gave them as a gift and now let her just go. She also noticed that she did not want to escalate the situation, and therefore asked not to tell others about this case because it is a secret. In the end, the girl realized that she was very tired today. Before all this, the man realized that something had happened in his absence in the capital. When Selvan met the commander of the knights, he was glad to see him, calling him a student. The man was surprised by this, because he had ceased to be an imperial knight and was no longer an apprentice. But it was pointed out to him that he had been so busy that he had not realized it until now, and so he ended up in the crown prince's palace. Already being there, he saw a girl and immediately understood that she was a princess. Rumors that the Empress cared for the concubine's daughter turned out to be true, but despite this, she was still Lillian's child, so he believed that the princess was obviously angry when he caught the thief. However, after she handed over the flowers that Jessie was so interested in, he changed his mind. He thought that the blood could not be fooled, but maybe it is really different. Later, Maria also appeared on the street. When she saw the knight, she was visibly surprised because she thought that he had left the knighthood. Without thinking long, the woman introduced Selvan to the princess as the heir to the Duchy of Arsian. It turned out to be a surprise for her because she thought he was just a reveler, but he turned out to be a more important person. However, now the question arose as to whether it is normal to appear like that at all, because he is essentially serving in hiding. Suddenly, the princess explained that they had met by chance and showed with all her appearance that it would be better for him to agree to this. Maria understood that something more seems to be here if the princess says so, but it also meant that everything was fine, so you could drink tea. In the end, the two of them decided to have a snack, and while doing so, the man explained about their land in the north of the empire, where everything around turned white in winter. And now they were talking about the snow. Selvan explained that it was very pleasant to walk on clean, white ground, where no one had set foot. While the woman was serving the heroine, she noticed as the knight continued to keep a close eye on Maria, which was quite strange. But in the meantime, he assured that in any case, he would like to invite her to the Duke's house one day. But before he could get an answer, the scary face of the prince appeared behind him and announced that he was here. Rudion wanted to know why this person was here at all, because there were rumors that he had fought with another knight. But Selvin himself assured that he resigned in order to get the title. Instead, the boy pointed out that pretending to be an imperial knight was a crime, to which he was told that the commander had not signed the release order, in which case it was already desertion. Suddenly, he declared that he arrived at the palace as soon as he learned that His Majesty was looking for him, but it was already too much. In the end, he would always call him out and then just pretend it didn't happen. In the end, Rudion took his sister in his arms and told the knight that if he needed a job, he would get it. He just had to wait patiently. Getting ready to leave, the boy asked the younger girl not to talk to such people anymore. Taking one last look at the knight's confused face, the girl suddenly asked if he really liked Maria, and the brother confirmed it, although he denied it. But the woman did not know about it, as it was a secret. Later, they met again in the office. But this time without any extra ears. It was a moment when it is worth revealing the cards. Rudion wanted to know if Selvin knew anything about Kiran Yestban. Adam also appeared there, who noticed that he was definitely well known, if his last name had already been mentioned, be that as it may. But the prince wanted to know everything, and as soon as possible, and the knight noticed that they were not very close, but that much he knew. The boy was 9 years old, and he was the only child. But Rudion, first of all, was interested in his relationship with girls, and this infuriated Selvin because he was still quite a child. But the prince explained that everything is not so simple, and when a man gives an expensive bracelet to a girl he met for the first time, there are not many options left. Although he was only 9, the girl is only 8, and you don't have to be a genius to understand that she is not yet ready for this. The knight agreed with this statement, and the prince went on to explain that he needed to invite the boy to the palace so that he would befriend Lawana. But since he could not follow him personally, Selvin would take care of this, and also accompany the princess. It is necessary to watch him carefully. There will be no discomfort. But if the boy does something suspicious, it is necessary to report it immediately. And the boy himself, in the meantime, his father asked him to gather because it was time for them to leave. But when he found out that the princess invited Kiran to the crown prince's palace, he was shocked, to say the least. The brother also explained that soon someone will come to visit her, someone who should not be paid attention to once again and should not be worried. But in any case, she was glad that her new outfits were finally ready. The prince remembered the last conversation with the duke, in which he assured that his son was the best. It was annoying because he was right. In any case, Rudion understood that he would have to take the behavior of the nobles under personal control, because he did not understand how they would raise their children at all, if they ended up like that. And therefore the brother asked the younger, if the guest behaves defiantly, just to kick him between the legs. Adam pointed out that these words were already a little superfluous, but in his head he understood that it would be good if nothing happened. But for some reason, the excitement did not disappear. Later, the guests appeared in the palace, and Kiran could not understand why they were here. And only now the duke noticed that he thought his son already knew that the prince cared about the princess. And this was incomprehensible to the boy because this is the same crown prince who hates Lillian's children. Finally, they entered the room where the brother and sister were. Rudion, skeptical from the start, asked if there was any reason for coming here, and the guest reluctantly agreed, adding that it was an opportunity to introduce his boy to the princess. And so, the husband officially introduced his son, expressing the hope that they would have a good time. And although the crown prince did not like it, they also needed to get to know each other. The duke immediately noticed the golden hair, which meant that she was different from the second prince, but she was still Lillian's daughter. And Kiran, meanwhile, at first sight recognized his bracelet on her hand, and therefore with the first thought he decided that it had been taken from that girl. When the boy was asked to say hello to the princess, he was noticeably reluctant to do so. The heroine understood that she had already seen this boy somewhere, but when and where remained forgotten. The older man noticed that his attitude had changed. And the prince realized that even after seeing the bracelet, nothing had changed. At that moment, they both had one thought, that these two did not recognize each other. Before leaving them, Rudion reminded his sister that he had said before that she would fight with all her might. Then Adam, reminded that he had to leave soon, Herzog also decided that it was time for him. In parting, he asked his son to behave well so that he would not regret anything later. Already in the corridor, Herzog noticed that, judging by the boy's reaction, he already understood that this bracelet was a gift from his son. Also, the guest noticed that he had no reason to worry, and although deep down he was interested, but no one could afford careless remarks directed at the imperial family. Then the prince pointed out that no one but him could do it, but the duke pretended not to understand what was being said. Rudion asserted that he has long had in mind that not all people are like Herzog. There were those everywhere who dared to wish for things they shouldn't. The man agreed with this. There were such people everywhere, and it did not only apply to adults. Often children took what they once heard from their parents as truth. Maybe later they regret their own words. But it is impossible to take back what was said. Nevertheless, they were worried that the accidentally spoken words could hurt Loana. Even if he didn't like it, the prince believed that the son would not say something offensive to her face. Then the guest noticed that he cared a lot about the princess, and Rudeon confirmed it with a smile, adding that he himself was often surprised by this. Duke Yestban knew that the person in front of him was 8 years old. That was the time when he lost everyone he loved. That little boy grew up and now tried to protect others. It was pointed out to him now that the path he was currently on could prove to be a difficult one, and Rudeon once thought the same. But before he made his choice, he already had people around him who would always be on his side. Adam assured with a smile that he had not really done anything to receive such thanks. Maria was also there, and as the guest had heard, she was the daughter of one who had been the prince's personal knight in the past. Having stood in their place, the man did not know whether it is possible to accept the child of the one who sent a loved one to death. But in any case, the duke hoped that his son would have fun with the princess, but the prince was more skeptical. As soon as they left the room, the children started staring intently into each other's eyes, which made Maria uncomfortable. In order to lighten the situation, the woman offered to prepare a place for them in the garden, and the heroine met this idea with enthusiasm. Loana wanted cocoa, but when asked what the guest wanted, he assured that he did not have any special tastes, and it was not that important to him. However, he was not a small child, so he asked not to make the cocoa sweet. At that moment, Loana was sure that she was being bullied. She sensed it even earlier. Kiran was clearly hostile towards her, but the reason was unknown, as she had not done anything to this boy. Maria wanted to point out his rudeness to the guest, but the princess stopped her. The girl said that they would go ahead, so you can take your time. There was no reason to worry, because her brother gave her some advice. The two of them went out into the street in silence, where Loana realized that she had long wanted to ask why he was looking at her like that. In response, the guy pointed out that she was quite rude to the guests, but the heroine countered by saying that he was the one who started it. Then the guest said that a princess who made a mistake and does not feel guilty can always be looked down upon. In the end, Loana couldn't stand it, and changed to a raised tone, asking what she did wrong because they had never met before, and he was acting like this. Kiran confirmed that today he met her for the first time, but he could already say for sure that Lillian's daughter was in front of him. It was a shock to her, but in one moment she saw a familiar symbol on the button. This meant that in front of her was the same boy who gave her the bracelet. But the Duke's son did not share the joy of the meeting, and as soon as he saw the bracelet again, he roughly grabbed her hand, declared that he hated people like her, who easily took what belonged to others and used it without remorse. But not receiving an answer, he explained that he had given this bracelet to another person. At this moment, the heroine realized that Kiran did not seem to recognize her, and although the princess asked to let him go and talk calmly, it seems that he was not going to do it, and continued to ask why she took the jewelry. Loana did not understand why he did not even look in her direction, why he did not try to recognize her, and this caused considerable anger. In the end, she got out of his hands, and the attacker, seeing the anger, was somewhat frightened. And then the princess used what her brother offered her. A loud scream was heard, to which Maria ran and began to ask if everything was okay, but the princess assured that she had just solved the problem. Then she turned to the offender, reminded her that when he said that it was a birthday present, she valued it very much, but now it was not needed. And only now, Kiran began to realize his mistake and its consequences. Only now he allowed the thought that that girl was actually a princess. However, since he never mentioned her, she had had enough of hearing this, so she returned the jewelry. The girl went back, and the guest wanted to go to her. But the maid did not allow him to do so, saying that it would be better for him to talk to the prince and the duke when they return. The woman did not understand how it was possible to behave like this towards the princess, because this is a serious crime punishable by death. Now he should be grateful to the princess that she did not threaten him with anything at parting. And just now, the boy began to fully realize what he had really done. Returning back to the room, Maria began to examine the wound on the wrist, which fortunately was not so deep. But Loana coldly said that everything was fine, and since she had dealt with it herself, there was no need to worry anymore. After receiving this bracelet from Kiran, the girl treasured it so much that even the maid wondered who gave it to her. As it turned out, it was the first gift in her life, but now that it has been returned, it no longer matters. Although she didn't want to think about it, she was still a little worried, probably because she had treated him as a friend even before she realized it. Later inside, Kiran met the maid and began to ask how Her Majesty was doing, to which she coldly said that she would report everything to the prince, and therefore he had better not come here again. This news frightened the guest even more. and therefore he asked to be allowed to see the princess for the last time, as he really wanted to apologize. And since Maria had the right to vote, he begged permission. The woman just sighed heavily at this. She would really like to punish him for daring to raise a hand against a member of the imperial family, but he is still a child. And when she thought about it and about what had been done, she felt a sense of anxiety. It was difficult to cope with her own emotions. The woman then asked for a promise that she would never harm Princess Luana again, and also to remember that this is now being done only for her.